Call this budget workshop session to order. And we have outside agency budgetary requests. And first up is Mr. Keith Atkins, Deputy Director, Delmarva Community Services.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us. Two-part, if I can, first to go over our transportation development plan. It's a 5-year plan that MTA requires, and I'll give you the facts of it. That was completed in 2022. The Transportation Development Plan Advisory Committee members consisted of representatives from Kent, Caroline, and Talbot, MTA, Mid-Shore Regional Council, Maryland, Upper Shore Transit, DCT, and a KFH group. First meeting was held on March 11th, 2021. Discussions on expanded services, improved bus stop amenities, employer-based programs, and future development in the counties. The committee provided input for additional stakeholders such as economic development, University of Maryland, United Way of Kent County, Chesapeake College, and Chesapeake Center. The TDP focused on data gathered from rider, community, and employer surveys. The TDP defined areas in each county that were transit-dependent, autoless households, youth population, individuals with disabilities, and individuals below the poverty line. The community survey reflected 58% of the respondents were aware of DCT service. Of those respondents, 68% had a positive impression of the service. 46% of the respondents were not aware of the service. Respondents noted service on Saturdays and additional information on current service and longer hours of service would be helpful. The rider survey reflected 65% of the respondents used DCT for work, 15% for social and recreational trips, with most of the respondents using the bus service 5 to 6 times a week. 35% of the respondents indicated they would have to make trips by asking family or friends to take them. 34% indicated they wouldn't be able to make the trips at all without the bus service. And 77% asked for additional Saturday service. 36% asked for a Sunday service, and 26% also asked for evening service. 89% of the riders do not have access to a vehicle, and 70% responded they do not have a valid driver's license. The Transportation Development Plan noted additional Saturday service may not be as productive as weekly service and could cost approximately $40,248 per year. The addition of a Sunday service would cost approximately $71,552, and the late evening expansion would cost approximately $76,755 per year. Software for a microtransit would be approximately $244,000 per year. The additional service included in the TDP would be approximately $583,170 per year, along with $514,200 for capital. The TDP indicated a benefit to reactivating the Community Transit Advisory Committee. It also viewed DCT transportation as a service for elderly and persons with disability. Rebranding would be an option to make the citizens of all counties aware that DCT is public transit. 5 technical memorandums were sent to the advisory committee members for review and corrections, and on April 21st, 2022, the final draft was provided to all parties. And Talbot County, as the lead county, has accepted the Transportation Development Plan, and we do this every 5 years as required by MTA. Are there any questions on that, gentlemen?
Sandy, you want to come up? Sandy Grande is in the audience, so you'd like to come up?
Thank
you. You're welcome. How are you today?
Good. Driving a little fast to get up here, sorry. I missed the beginning of the meeting, sorry. I'm Santo Grande, and I'm the
Director, President, CEO of Delmarva Community Services, and we're very glad to be working with you over these years. I think we've had a good partnership with the transportation, and we've always found that Kent County has been very good to work with, and we feel like you're one of the model counties because you built up, I think, a pretty good working relationship over the years, and a lot of thanks is to Shelley also for what she's done with us, and we appreciate that. So, but we look forward to working with you every year, really. And if
We
there's ever-
appreciate that, and we see the request for this year's request, and I'm sure we'll get to that further down in our work session. We will, but I would like to run one thing past you, and Sandy, we had, I don't know if Mr. Atkins was here last year or not, but we did have a little bit of a conversation about transportation last year where we were maybe exploring the idea, and the piece that I like, I think, you know, obviously transportation it's a tough thing in these rural counties to put together, and but I was wondering, and I've thought this for a while, and I think we discussed it a little bit last year, and I'm not saying that all three of us agree with this. This is just me speaking right now, but I did have a conversation with one of the commissioners from Caroline County, and he and I met on this and kind of talked about it. We haven't really had a chance to discuss it as a board too much, a little bit, but you know, if there's some criticism, and there always is with regards to whatever you're trying to put together, with the transportation, is that maybe people see the buses with these 30-passenger buses with a couple people on them sometimes. The fact that when they go on use these buses, that they have to wait sometimes to catch another bus, or depending on where they're going, makes it a little inconvenient for some of the seniors. So I've always thought that, and I mentioned it to you one time, if we had 2 or 3 smaller vehicles that could zip around Kent County, and maybe, I mean, take a look at, and I don't want to do this right now, but I want us to think about it and maybe see if there's something we could put together that would better serve our older population, where it was like a beast on demand.
Right.
In other words, they would call the dispatcher maybe a day ahead, or even try that day if they had a doctor's appointment. We could go pick them. You know, we could serve a lot of people, at least I think. I guess I drove one of those little vehicles one time for a year and a half, and I saw how it worked. And I've always thought that would keep our people from having to wait at a bus stop for any length of time, but it would allow us to zip. Maybe a couple of them would stay within the county, and obviously we have a lot of people going to Easton for doctor's appointments, but Easton's not that far. You know, you can half hour from Chestertown. You can probably go 40 minutes. You can be there and back. So would be more friendly to the people, I think. Now I'm not insinuating get rid of our 30-passenger buses. Maybe you look at some of the ones that are used the most, and then maybe do away with some that's not used as much, but put these smaller vehicles in their place. I don't know how complicated that would be, but that's been my vision of how we could make this a little better for our people. And when I spoke with the commissioner from Caroline County, he agreed. He thought that was a pretty good idea. It's something that they might even talk to, but I don't want to get ahead of them. I mean,
let's not talk about Caroline County.
I'm good. You're right. We'll talk about Kent County. You're exactly right. But that's where that's what I'd like to see us work towards. Now, my colleagues that certainly are gonna weigh in on this, and we've talked about it a little bit, but that's just always been my impression of how we could better it. And it's not criticizing anybody, it's just from what I've seen here locally, that I think that could, we even had the United Way come in here a couple, 3 years ago and talk about this very issue. And they said, by no means are we talking about doing away with your operation, but maybe massage it a little bit to where using some of these smaller vehicles, and I think they agree with that premise as well, that idea as well. So maybe if we could explore that going forward, we'll take this request and
We can go back and, you know, look at redrawing it in a sense that you're basically looking for a demand response service.
yeah,
You know, more than a route service.
yes, yes.
And so if we did it, say, incrementally over, say, 5 years or something, parcel out the routing services to a full demand service, that's something we could kind of look towards, you know, and every year, you know, cut down a little bit on the routing and then increase the demand service. The door-to-door, basically, is a demand service, where you call and you ask for a pickup or whatever, and we can look at that. It's just that you know, sometimes you know, Kent is a good county to look at that because it is a smaller county, and it may be easier to create a demand service than a county that has a larger land mass.
I mean, most of the calls here, I mean, Rock Hall, one extreme, Millington is the other extreme, but the hospital and the vast majority of the doctor's offices and stuff are here in Chestertown, so 15 minutes that way, 15 or 20 minutes that way, 15 or 20 minutes that way. You slip out there and bring them in here and get them taken care of, and you get them home, there's no waiting. That's how that's something and I tell you, we spoke to the Upper Shore Aging about that, and I actually spoke last week at United Way one morning, and they were, when it was over and they emailed me back and they thanked me for coming and talking to them about it, they said that they were excited about that idea. They liked that idea, and so anyhow, my colleagues, you got any questions or comments? But Sandy's the one that supplies, his operation supplies these 30 passenger buses, and they got some fixed routes. And I don't care where the people are going, if they're serving people, you know, that's a good thing. So, but just supplementing with some of the 2 or 3 of these little vehicles that could slip around town, I think would make it even better.
Yeah, no, I agree. That would be, I mean, and that's something that we can talk about and look at phasing it in, as you said, over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
We're doing some of that,
Well,
though, with the Medicaid.
Yeah, if I can jump in. In the 1st of February, we have a new dispatcher in our Kent County office. That dispatcher now is coordinating all, and we're doing the on-demand. We are actually going out, and it's in the, and I have copies. Shelley, I'm sorry I didn't get them to you earlier. We're serving Chestertown, Betterton, Wharton, Rock Hall, Millington, Chester, Fairleigh, Kennedyville, Cecilton, and Galena. We saw the need from last year. Currently, we're still using some buses, but we just got another vehicle come in through MTA, Ford Transit. So we're doing these services now. We know that MTA is looking at a fare structure, a funding structure based on service, revenue miles, revenue hours, compared to non-revenue hours and miles. So we've already begun the on-demand. We have, if somebody, and I've provided Dawson with copies of it, that, you know, there's people that call in 2 or 3 days a week in Rock Hall and want to go to work at a certain time get dropped off, and we're doing those services now. We're very fortunate with our new dispatcher that she's able to tie that in with the adult daycare and the seniors and the medical wheelchair that we're doing with Kent County Health Department. So it's a really, between the software and the new dispatcher, we've began that on demand the 1st of February.
Good. Well, we have your request. You've heard what my thoughts are. I would hope that maybe you stay in contact with Dawson. And maybe when we get past this budget, maybe we'll have another meeting
Sure.
in 2 or 3 months, and but give it some thought, come back and see what could possibly put together.
Right, we'll try and do some of it incrementally so that we may be able to look at it in the short look. There might be some things we can do over the next month or two that we can begin processing this.
Start out with one of those little
Right.
vehicles. I mean, you're right, we're not gonna, Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're not talking about doing away with a whole system and replacing it. We're talking about, as we do, just a little at a long and see how it works. We might find out that it doesn't work as easy as what I think it's gonna work. So, I enjoyed doing business with you, and I just hope you appreciate our, just making some suggestions, the way we could make it better for all of us.
Not a problem whatsoever.
We're sort of on the ground here in Kent County, and we, maybe a little closer to it than you all are, and so we're going to take your request, and we'll be, like I said, if you'll keep touch base with Dawson and work with him as trying to put something together and see where we could go, and we'll meet again after we have some more time and get past this budget.
Yeah, any way we can improve the system, we're willing to do that.
I appreciate it.
It sounds like that you're already doing somewhat of what Commissioner Fithian is actually suggesting.
Yes.
And maybe we just need to maybe think about enhancing it
Yes.
a little bit more to meet the needs of our senior population and others that need it.
Because I didn't mean to interrupt. If you listen to some of the criticism, and like I said, everything's criticized to some degree, and we know we're not going to erase all that. But it's when, most of these people, I would think, or a lot of the people that need this service are older people, waiting at a bus stop for an hour or however long. I don't know for any length of time. I think it's a little inconvenient, and something on responding a little quicker would be a great way a great improvement. So
I think looking at it, starting to chip away at the demand service, it might take a couple years to change the whole system over, but we can do it incrementally and begin to increase the amount of demand service that we have.
And if we do it a little at a time, then if we find out that it's not the way we want to go, then we haven't disrupted the whole program. So I agree with that part of it. So if that's, unless my colleagues have comments or questions, then we got your request and we'll be working on it.
Did you have something to say?
I was just going to say, I was just stopped over the Kent County office, and a lady called in. She was at Dollar General, wondering if she'd get a ride home, and the dispatcher called the bus 199 and sent it to pick her up. So
Very good.
again, we're, as you say, Commissioner,
Yeah.
we're there. We can definitely enhance that program, and I have some stats. I can go over them, or I can give them to Shelley, and she can give them to you for your review later on. But I can say the ridership is up. We try to meet monthly with Dawson to go over those numbers, and it is a partnership between FTA, MTA, DCT, and Kent County, and whatever we can do to enhance that, we're open to it.
Well,
The demand program that Commissioner Fithian is talking about, I don't know whether it would maybe be a very cost-effective way of providing that service or not. I mean, would it maybe save dollars if it, if you were just going on, instead of a certain route, that you were just responding to the needs at the moment?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does. I'll just give you a couple of examples. 2 years ago, we started Talbot Mod in the town of Easton, and that has really exploded. I mean, the ridership has really increased. Currently, we're doing a pilot with Human Services Council for Caroline County, having one vehicle staged in the Greensboro and one in the Fettlesburg area. That ridership is almost zero. So we're still getting numbers. That pilot program goes through the end of June, but clearly we're seeing the ridership up with the ability for someone to call and say, hey, I need to be picked up at the hospital and carried home, or vice versa. We've even currently, we have an agreement with Kent County Health Department for medical assistant transportation, but we're having some self-pay that are calling now and say, hey, can I go, I have a doctor's appointment in Easton, and we are taking those individuals to Easton, so,
Very good.
yes,
Thank you very much.
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And anything, I mean, if you want to get together before the final budget is put together, we'd be happy to come back and talk with you and go over any issues you might have.
Thanks, Sandy, I appreciate it. You always have been, we've worked together for a long time, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate working with Kent County. You're a great county to work with, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
make it a little easier on us, so we appreciate it. Thank you.
We hope we can continue that.
Thank you.
Paul Rickard, Area Extension Director, University of Maryland Extension. Welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioners, what I've provided to you in this folder is our annual report from 2022. So you can look over that if you are interested in some of the data, some of the facts and figures about what the University of Maryland Extension does in Kent County. And then I provided you with a printout of a PowerPoint that basically details the aspects or elements of our budget. The budget that you have in front of you is actually the county portion, the request to the county. And what I've done in this third page is kind of expanded that so you can see the state contribution and the federal contribution. You may recall that we were called Cooperative Extension since 1914, and in Maryland changed the name to University of Maryland Extension 12, 15 years ago, in part because MCE is also Maryland Correctional Enterprises, and trying to not be confused with MCE, Maryland Cooperative Extension, was important. So what I've done here, I gotta put on my glasses. What I've done here is broken out the personnel in our office and their sources of funding. Some people are entirely state paid, some people are entirely federal government paid, and we have one person who is currently a quarter-time person who is entirely county paid for those for that 25% or 8 to 10 hours a week. Also, fringe benefit costs, as broken down here. Our travel is largely covered by the county, and then our office operations is mostly covered by the county as well. So you can see that breakdown of the expenses. Also, on the next page, I put our budget changes back to 2019, so you can see a little further back. And then also the budget, or I'm sorry, the COLA and merit increases that came down from the state over that period. We are, so almost all of our personnel are paid by like a formula. You know, we'll get some from state, some from federal, some from the county. And when we get one of the mandated COLAs, you know, if my salary was $10,000 and I was 50% and 50%. Well, if there's a $1,000 increase, we would ask the county for 50% of that 1,000 increase, or $500, and then another 50% would come from the state or the federal government, depending on how they were paid. So when there is a COLA that does come down, it does affect our ask from the county. And this year, it seems a lot more if you look at the percentages over under FY '24 from FY '23. In FY '23, the request was flat funded. And so we actually had to cut hours from our half-time person and make them a quarter-time person. That was a person in horticulture and doing master gardener coordination, who are volunteers that do horticulture education around the county at our farmers markets and things like that. So this request is incorporating both our regular increase for this year for the COLAs, and then also the one from last year. So that's why it's larger than a typical ask. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what that was and why it was going from a 144 to a 170 request. And then, of course, on the last page, you can see some of the benefits that, that we bring to the county. Just based on the independent sector's value of volunteerism for 2022. We have in the upper right, you can see the ROI for 2022 based on their $29.95 per hour as a value of a volunteer. The determinable rate of return for the efforts is over $450,000 that of volunteerism into the county directly. You can also see our less quantifiable sorts of things down below that in the green, like the number of 4-H members and the number of clubs and campers and things like that. I don't know how you attach a value necessarily to those sorts of things. But just to make sure you're all aware of our program areas, we have 4 major program areas. 4-H is one of them. Ag and food systems is another, and they work largely with the farming community. Family and consumer sciences, where we teach classes like dining with diabetes and shopping on a budget and things like that to our county residents. And then also environment and natural resources, and that's where our horticulture educator resides and working in that program. So I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions you may have.
That's pretty self-explanatory, unless Al, you, John?
Good job.
Well, thank you. I try to be as clear as I can with you all, so you know what.
No, I think, I think you've done a good job of making it as clear as you can.
All
All right.
right, thank you.
Thank you, then.
All right, I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at a later date as well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and I would like to introduce Dr. Dwayne Joseph. He's our ag educator. I know you talked with Beth Hill a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We used to have a quarterly educator would come in and just give you kind of an update of what's going on and what we're doing with our programming. And Dr. Joseph came to Kent County last July and is in the process of building his programming, working with the farmer and the agricultural community. And so he'll be coming, do we have that on the schedule yet?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. In a couple of months, probably. So,
Very good.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt, I guess you're gonna take it from here?
Yep, so you have your binders, and you can either follow along in the small binders. We'll start with the overview, kind of talk about where we are. And that's in the overview tab, or you can see it up on the screen, hopefully. Okay. All right, so with the changes that we made, last week, this is what our revenues look like. We still have, a little over 3.6 million gross we're about 2,900,000 short of balancing out the operating side. So we really need to focus on that. I had also in that, overview section, I had sent you, I guess, changes and tried to identify some reduction options. But basically, we need to look at the areas, I guess, where dollars are still going up. So again, if you look in that overview tab, it would be the first sheet in the overview tab. So this is just a breakdown of last time. Actually, we made a lot of progress last time. We needed to cut 6,000,001 when we started last week, and you can see the areas where we made reductions and allocations operating in Kent County Public Schools. The health department was going to send some money back to us for mosquito control and rent. And we had some projection changes, and our fund balance reserves go down a little bit every time that we cut the budget. So we still have this little over $3,000,000 shortfall. So I put a list together of possible areas that we can look at. I can walk through them, and we can start to look at them one at a time. We did get some good news from the health department. They are willing to fund $408,000 towards our detention center medical costs out of that large increase that we have in our contract. And in return, they'd like to increase their request to us because the additional money they're getting is in their core formula, and they can't use it for environmental health services. So they'd like to give us money out of their core service budget, but they'd like us to fund up to $60,000 towards environmental health specialists, which would be a net gain to us of about just under $350,000. So,
Well, I think that's a pretty good investment.
Yeah, I think that's worth.
so, yeah.
Easiest decision of the day.
Yeah, it will be the easiest decision of the day. With the Kent County Public Schools, we had, when we had left it last time, we had funding in there for maintenance of effort, 125 for the coordinator, and 250,000 for, was for just the additional funding that we had gotten. Based on our read of the regs, we're not required, and these are opportunities for cuts, so these are just areas where we think we can go in and reduce the budget. If that 250,000 can be included in maintenance of effort, we wouldn't need to add it on top of it, so that could be a reduction in our budget. We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new positions in the budget.
I don't mean to interrupt, but can we blow that up? Can that be bigger, a little bigger up there on the screen?
Let's see.
Will it
It
work?
should be able to be. I think I just have to take it out of here. Let's
That's
see.
better.
Sorry.
Leave it
Yeah,
like
and-
that.
Yep, I will. Let me get rid of this. Okay, how's that?
That's much better.
Much better? Okay.
So obviously, we all believe that we're gonna accept the health department's proposal.
I would highly recommend we accept the health
I-
department proposal.
I think we're good there.
Consensus.
Yeah, I think we're safe to say.
And so I don't know if you want to roll through all the opportunities and go back and then revisit some, or if you want to take them one at a time as we go through.
I think with the new positions, I'd like to talk about that.
Okay,
And the first one has to do with the administrative assistant part-time for the emergency services, correct?
correct.
That's OES and KCDC.
Together.
Right.
They're
And
gonna,
And the
they're gonna
police
share one.
accountability.
they would share it, and then the other half of this position's already in the budget is the Police Accountability Board administrative support, which we have a strong likelihood of being grant funded, that half.
So the dollar amount that we're looking at is 49,000.
Correct.
And they're gonna work in all three
Yes.
departments. Okay. The next one is the, Wayne had actually submitted a budget where he was asking for 4 paramedics. And I see our new EMS chief is here. Could we ask you to come up so I could just try to get some clarification on some things? Congratulations on your new position, chief.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
I hope you're enjoying what you're doing.
Yes, yes.
Good.
Transition time was a little rough, but we're on to greener pastures now. So what do you have questions for me? So Wayne did inform me that he put in for the 4, and I talked to Shelley yesterday that we're down to just the 1 position.
Right. I think it's important that at least on my part, and I think the other two commissioners here agree, that it's our expectation that we provide 24/7, 365 days a year of not just BLS, but ALS coverage in Galena, Rock Hall, and Lynch.
Correct.
And we've added some EMTs.
Yes.
And I think you're fully staffed paramedic-wise
Yes.
currently,
Yes.
right? So right now, we've accomplished that.
Right.
And my question basically, and I don't know the answer to this, is I know that sometimes when people go on like vacation or they're out sick or whatever, you have a on-call list where you reach out to the part-timers.
Correct.
Do you know how many part-time paramedics that we currently have?
Currently on the books, we have 3. I only have 2 that actually are working. So the third one could be up for review for replacement.
Is there a way to get that third one on board or
I could talk to her, yeah. I know right now she's working 2 full-time jobs, so I don't know what her availability looks like. But I can definitely reach out and speak to her about her intentions moving forward.
maybe, if my memory serves me right, this, without mentioning names, this particular person lives in the north part of the county
Yes, sir.
and is very, very committed to, obviously, her full-time employment.
Correct.
And sometimes has a problem fulfilling a whole 12-hour shift or whatever.
Yeah.
So is there a way to maybe allow that particular person to,
Yeah, so what I have done in the past is I'll like do blocks, so if she can only do an 8-hour block or a 6-hour block, I will at least get what coverage I can up north before I shut the unit down at all. And more recently, I've gone up there myself and worked it for coverage days. I'm here anyway, so.
anything that we can do to increase our call list, I guess, of paramedics that want to work part-time, I would encourage you to try to do that. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because do you believe, in your professional opinion, that you can maintain 24/7, 365 of ALS coverage in all 3 of those stations that the county mans?
No,
Without an additional position?
No, because right now with the part-timers, their availability is up and down. So what's happening is, I know that in the past month, there's been 3 days that Galena was completely shut down for advanced life support. I did backfill it with BLS, so the ambulance was double staffed. And I'm afraid that what's gonna end up happening is that I'll have another employee leave. I do have word that I do have one looking to leave due to other counties having LEOPS and higher pay. We're not really competitive anymore, so I'm a little nervous about keeping that staffing, and then what's gonna happen is we're gonna look at what the overtime cost is for backfilling with our full-time ALS providers when part-timers can't work. So we have right now, Brad and I pulled some data. So since April 1, we've had 11 instances where the county has been completely exhausted of ALS. And the longest time for a return was 2 hours. Now, luckily, in those times, we didn't have any additional calls, so we made out okay. But that's been concerning to me. There's also been some issues on the hospital end that we're working out. I'm working with that with the medical director. They're utilizing us for transports out of the hospital. So we're trying to find a solution for that. That takes some of us out for a long time. I know one went to Johns Hopkins a few weeks ago. So that's,
So the hospital is utilizing the county paramedic system
yes.
for transports to other hospitals?
Yes, because they can't get their private service to get here fast enough. So,
If I'm not mistaken, I was wondering about that. I'm not as familiar with the program as what the sheriff is, but there was an incident in Rock Hall last night about 6 or 7 o'clock, where that ambulance was getting ready to transport someone to Kent General and over in Dover Hospital.
so that was because that was a cardiac patient. They were having an active heart attack, and Chester River cannot handle that at all. So we divert them to specialty centers per the state protocol.
So there was some, little more of
Yeah,
issue. There
yes,
was-
sir.
There
Yeah.
was some
It wasn't
issues.
just a regular, I want to go to Kent General.
There was something going on there.
Yes, sir.
And they had to get him to a hospital, and
Yes.
I guess when Chestertown can't handle it, then it's the patient's choice where he goes.
So every hospital has a designation, so for cardiac problems, it's either Easton or Anne Arundel or Kent General. Trauma, it's usually Christiana, because we can get there with the bypass pretty quickly now. If aviation's not available, for us to just fly them from town to
And I can
Baltimore.
only imagine that transporting someone to Kent General in Dover, that takes those people out of service for a couple, 3
was-
hours.
I think it was close to 4 hours before he got back in service.
Well, let me make this broad statement for everyone that's still sitting here. We are trying to come up with a budget. And as you've heard Ms. Merritt say, we've got to cut 3 million, basically, from the budget that we've already worked on a little bit at this point. So obviously, not that we want to do this, but I mean, positions are big price tags. And that's the reason why I asked for you to come in, because, I mean, just a paramedic there, we're looking at 87,167. And if we could live without it and still provide the appropriate coverage, not that we couldn't revisit it next year, I certainly would be willing to do that, but that's why I think it might be so important to build up your
Part-time list.
your part-time staff. The other thing that I'm not familiar with is what is your current policy as far as, because you still have your certification. If you had to step up as the chief and fill one of these slots so that we do have 24-hour coverage.
So what I've been doing is I page it out we have our schedule system pages out to everybody. If we don't get any takers on it, I'll come in and work the shift, and just offset my week hours. So I've been doing as much as I can.
So what I'm hearing you say is, in the meantime, until we can build this reserve up, you would be willing to fill the
Yeah,
the
the holes where-
paramedic slot.
Yeah.
And I realize that causes you some extra burden or whatever, but obviously, the northern station is not as active as the Lynch and the Rock Hall stations are. So maybe that would be the area that maybe you might want to think about. And I'm not trying to tell you how to run your ship.
No,
It's
I
just-
understand. I know.
it's just that I'm trying to figure out a way to meet the needs of our citizens. And at the same time, I
Cut $3 million out of the budget.
cut $3
Yeah,
million
right.
out of a budget and still try to give our county employees a pay increase.
Right. So that's doable. What is my number, how many part-time people I can have on roster? Because at present, I have, as I know of 4 positions that are on my flow chart. I have 2 EMT spots that are funded, I believe. I know that
For part-time.
part-time, that one has resigned already, so I have 1 part-time position open. So is 4 my limit for, I guess, ALS, or can I just keep building the roster?
Just build it, and, I suppose if you build it so much where people aren't called, they're gonna lose interest.
Right,
But
correct, right.
wherever your comfort level is, because from the county's perspective, a shift is a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not gonna fill 1 shift with 2 people, so it's the same cost to the county either
right,
way.
okay.
As long as
Sounds
the
good.
shifts are filled.
Yes, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think if we can build the part-time list, we can sustain without funding another position. So, I hate to lose it, but I do understand the predicament you're in.
This is a bad year. Next year might be brighter, it might be dimmer, who knows?
Right.
But, we've got the task of trying to, I've got the same conversation to have with our sheriff. I got,
Yeah.
I thought we had already cut the prosecutor's position.
I don't,
It was a full-time and a
I have it as a
part-time one.
part-time, I don't think, I didn't have that we had come to
I
a
thought we
conclusion
did
on.
too, Sheriff. to tell you the truth.
Okay, well, happy to.
We just gained
I think under the
69,000.
circumstances, it's just not a good year to be adding a new position, especially when we go down, we start talking about vacant positions, and we kind of froze some of that temporarily, or paused it, whatever you want to call it.
So
But-
we have consensus on those two then, the paramedic and the prosecutor?
As long as our chief here can assure us that we will have that coverage 24 hours. I don't want to jeopardize anyone's well-being or safety or
So-
life.
Currently, as it stands, when Wayne retired, our operating was 2. So we could go down to 2 people, 1 Rock Hall, 1 Lynch. When the new director starts, my hope is that we can up that to having every station has to be covered. And if that means we start having to mandate people, that's what we have to do. It's part of their job, is they know they have to get mandated. It happens.
My personal feeling is I don't think you need to wait for the new director.
Okay.
That, you're running that department.
Mhm.
You need to make sure we have 24/7, 365.
Okay.
And I'm assuming you
No,
all
I-
would be in agreement with that.
Okay.
We need to protect our citizens
Yep, I agree.
and be there for them when they have a crisis.
Yep, I will do that, and I will start working on the part-time list. soon
And
as possible.
I know we don't have the vehicles up here right now,
Mhm.
but in Wayne's budget, how many vehicles was he asking for EMS?
So if you look in your book on the,
I think one.
the lease tab, leased vehicles, it's like the third one from the back. They have one Chevy Tahoe in the budget. And so this list is actually on the schedule to look at in its totality, so I don't know if you wanna take them one
Well, I
at a time,
just-
or you wanna just.
I
look
was
at-
trying to educate myself about the current fleet that EMS has.
Okay.
Obviously, you have chase vehicles, and
Right.
obviously, that's an important
Yep.
part of, that's really the paramedic's office.
Yeah, right.
How many do you currently have?
So currently, we have 7.
7 chase vehicles.
7 chase vehicles. Two of them are going this year, because I have 2 getting worked on now to come in service. Per Mike Molds, he already cut our vehicle for next year, which is fine. The oldest truck is the one that I use when I'm here during the day, and it's a 2016 with 38,000 miles on it. So,
I think that's the one slated for this coming year.
so with
Same miles on it?
my truck has 38,000, but it's not it was never used as a primary EMS unit just because it wasn't set up right when it was purchased. So it was what Dave Rice wrote in and what I use when I come to work.
Is it set up properly now, or?
It's functional. I have enough gear to function, yes.
So that we have 7 chase vehicles and 3 paramedic stations that we cover.
Yes.
And 2 of these are being turned in because they've just had it, or,
They're the FY '23 vehicles that have already been, they're budgeted for this
And
current
they're the
year.
ones that are being worked on now.
Correct, yes, sir.
that are at the outfitter.
Yes.
Okay, so you're getting 2 new ones here soon.
Yes. So with that, we should be good for a while, especially since I've restructured how we're doing responses. So a good bit of the time, the paramedics on the ambulance, and they're going to calls that way. They're not even using the chase vehicle. So they're going to be sitting more now than they ever have. But working with the fire chiefs so I don't step on people's boundaries and taking Rock Hall's ambulance and bring it in the Chestertown's response area, it's logistics. So I do keep a ALS chase car in each station just for a backup, so they have it.
So you're keeping a chase car in the station as a backup for
So
the
I'll
county
use,
paramedics or for the fire company?
for the county paramedics. So I'll use Galena as an example. So Millington, their fire chief doesn't want Galena's ambulance coming into their district because if Galena transports, they lose out on that transport money. So I've split the box up, so if it's a Kennedyville, Betterton, or Galena call, that they'll go on the ambulance as paramedic 3, respond, deal with the patient. If it's a Millington call, then the crew will split and the paramedic will go in their chase vehicle and then upgrade Millington's ambulance if they get out.
From BLS to ALS.
Correct.
I guess.
I know it's confusing. A lot of that
I'm
came
sitting
down
here
from the fire
wondering-
chiefs.
I can see us having maybe 5, but to have 7 vehicles that are sitting a lot of times,
So 7, no, 7 including the ambulance. So our ambulance is still at Central. So
Count if you
6,
come back.
so
One of the
6,
6 is yours.
yeah, so
you
6.
know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I do.
I'm wondering if you need the new paramedic vehicle.
Well, it
Have two
sounds to
of
me, if this one is yours and this one is not being used as the chase vehicle,
Mhm.
that if it were to come off of this
Yeah,
coming
it's-
year's list and you were to keep it,
Yeah,
the
it'd be-
2016 with 38,000 miles, that it wouldn't be the end of the world, right?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
You think that's doable?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I'm fine with that.
I mean, look, I want to support you any way that we possibly
Yeah.
can for the betterment of our citizens, but, we got some dollars here to cut.
No, that's something that's fine. If it's got to be cut, it gets cut. It's not a big deal. Because at that point, we'll be an entire fleet of Tahoes, the oldest being, I think, a 2017, and then my Explorer would be a 16 with the oldest vehicle we have.
So the 3 stations that we're going to be taking care of, they're going to have adequate chase vehicles that are safe
Yep.
and dependable,
Yes.
without the one that you're asking for in the budget.
Correct, yep.
So if you were to cover a shift, just
Mm-hmm.
for my own clarity, you would drive the 2016, let's say, to Galena, but where is the chase vehicle? Is it at Galena already?
It's at Galena.
So if you needed it,
Right,
and this one is malfunctioning or whatever because it's a little bit older, there's still basically a brand-new
Yes.
chase vehicle there
yeah.
to be
So
used.
I always keep a spare, like, ready reserve, because we do a lot of deer strikes in the winter, fall. So typically, we have at least 2 or 3 a year. So I try to keep one ready to go at all times. So that's one of those vehicles is an extra,
Well,
but yeah.
I think, obviously, we need to cut the paramedic position and probably cut the vehicle too. That's being requested in the budget. Because I think you have the adequate, you
Yep.
got 2 brand new vehicles that
Correct.
that you're getting ready to take delivery of, I'm
Yes.
assuming. So,
Yep.
in this tough time, I think that we need to do that. But it doesn't mean that next year that you don't ask for what you need.
Yeah, it's always, don't pay attention to what we say. We want to hear what you think you need, and then
Right.
then we get a chance to talk about it and figure
Yeah.
out how much we can afford to give you.
Right.
Look, this EMT and paramedic service, and like I've said this story, people get tired of hearing it, I'm sure, but we started with a half of a paramedic some 20-some years ago, and we're proud of where we're at today. And there's been years in the past where there's been requests come in for additional paramedics, EMTs, and we just weren't able to do it. But over the time, when, you might not get it this year, next year's better, and now we're where we are today because we did do that instead of, and without raising taxes on the people, we were able to put this program together, and we're getting close.
Right.
So if we have to, I don't want people to think that this is, we've had to do this in the past.
Right.
That's the way you build your program a little at a time until you get it where you want it. So I appreciate you working with us
Yeah,
to
no problem.
help put it together.
And the other thing is too, I heard you mention LEOPS. I know that Kent County is not offering that currently. And this certainly isn't the year to try to do something like that.
Right.
But keep that on your
Okay.
radar.
I know it's a big investment. So,
I understand. I understand that. So,
all right.
all right, well,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Chief.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Try.
So Pat, we got rid of 87,167.
And about 10,000
Well, 68, oh, for the vehicle?
for the vehicle.
17,300.
Okay, so that's
And
about 100,000.
the prosecutor's part-time position.
That's right.
You know, I know he asked for it last year, and has asked this year. Maybe encourage him to think about it again next year.
Okay. All right, and we have two other ones on that list. I know we're gonna talk about the deputy next week in closed session, so not sure if you want to discuss the strategic initiatives manager.
Just for curiosity, for today's effort, let's include cutting the deputy position too, just as a tentative thing, and wait until after we talk to Dennis, or else I just remember a mental note
Okay.
that there's 115,000 there for that deputy position that might have to be cut.
Okay, I'll leave it on the list to be cut then until we.
Okay,
It'll be
don't-
easier.
You know,
I don't want it to get lost.
it's a little bit of a different animal because it deals with the safety of our,
So we will.
our county, so.
Yep, we'll talk about that next week. So the next one on there is the strategic initiatives manager.
And Jamie is here.
I'm not sure, I don't even know what that is.
It used to be called the Housing and Transportation Coordinator.
It's on,
I don't know if you want to
it's on.
hear from Jamie about that position, or, there's actually, her write-up is in your books, I can give you the page number for that.
That's one I personally think we need to keep.
And if you have any questions, this week would be particularly beneficial as far as Jamie's schedule.
Next week is fine too.
Okay,
I've made arrangements.
okay.
Okay.
And that's salary and benefits all together.
Correct.
I don't know how you all feel, but I think.
Well, that's a position that was grant funded,
Yeah.
Right. And now we're
and now,
assuming.
correct. And we had hired someone, correct.
Not a big deal, but because we did, we're working on the title. It should be strategic projects manager, includes housing and transportation, then anything else the commissioners decide
Okay.
should be worked on.
We added that job responsibility not too long ago, I think,
Correct,
a couple of meetings ago.
yes.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, so in that new position section, we're taking out the two. And so it's about 156,000 we're taking out of that 413. Okay, so if we want to move on to the next section down, these are the positions that we identified as vacant. Currently, we have 7 of them there. I think we have some of the department heads here associated with them. And I'm not sure if you want more information on them. I can.
Well, the associate planner position has been advertised for a regular while now,
A year.
It's been vacant all year.
and we've been able to live without it for now. I'm not sure exactly what, maybe Shelley can tell us what they did.
That, or we can get Mr. Mackey to step in.
So the whole point was to restructure the department to take the workload and be able to spread it, especially over the planner, spread it a little bit more. Can you just pause, Bill? Especially in light of, the extra project of the land use ordinance. There've been, there are 2 people in particular that are working some pretty heavy-duty overtime to make everything work. Assuming we're full steam ahead on the land use ordinance, it looks like some of the other special projects and permits are gonna take a little longer to get finished, basically, to come to completion, because the staff is having a hard time with the workload.
What we're talking about here, we're talking about just freezing these positions, or pausing them, whatever terminology.
Right now,
you
they're
use.
paused. So the question would be, do you wanna cut them out of next year's budget?
But in Pat's most recent numbers, I think we've planned on taking them out. I mean,
I did not take them out because I think we wanted to hear from the people, and so they would, that $3 million that we have to cut would reduce that. I was afraid to take them all out because it didn't sound, while you agreed to
Oh,
pause
that
them,
$3 million you're talking about doesn't take, if we was to, if we were to take that 780 out, that
to
doesn't
take it down
count.
to 2 million too.
Okay.
So it's not out of the number yet. We really hadn't, we agreed to pause them, but I don't know that there was general consensus about removing them from the budget. So,
Right, yeah, but I know what my knee-jerk reaction is, but while we're waiting for Bill, I see there's some stuff there. Mr. Moles, would you like to address some of these positions?
Mike has the lion's share.
I think it's noteworthy too that we've had a couple, since we've begun this discussion, there have been a couple more positions that have been vacated for one reason or another. So I don't know how deep we want to delve into this discussion.
We want to delve
Are
$3
we
million
gonna-
worth.
Were we planning on having any kind of a closed session to talk about those two positions that you're talking about?
So next week, we're gonna have a closed session and we can talk about any person that's in an existing position in any capacity.
Well, why don't we, because some of this, you know, when you get talking about positions and people and stuff, you never know. Should we put those vacant positions on the agenda next week when we can?
So they're currently they're ready to be discussed for next week. Pat is starting to get,
Because there's not gonna, the bottom line is, there's not gonna be anybody walk out of here that's really tickled to death with us, or because of the challenge that we've been given.
Pat
You talk about cutting three, when you talk about it in the very beginning, you got $8 or $9 million that you gotta figure out how to balance a budget. There comes a point where it's just not doable unless you do pretty tough things, and I think, I'm afraid that's where we're at, and,
so Pat she's really getting antsy to get to talking about the tax. So anything that can be talked about today, we wanted to have it available for you to talk about today. There will be more to talk about next week. But if there's going to be a change in the tax rate, the advertising has to start, do we know when?
We have to, by the end of our session next Tuesday, we're gonna have to know if we're going to change the tax rate.
okay.
So I think the closer you can work this number out, between, you know, whatever we can address this week, I'd like to address, but we can certainly table all of this.
So all of the rest of, all of the vacant positions that aren't talked about today will be talked about next week, unquestionably.
So, I mean, if you, Mike's here, if there were any of them that you wanted to discuss, or if you wanna table it.
Well, with all due respect, I mean, I can almost bet you that Mike is gonna say he needs that division chief and that environmental operations person. And unless I'm mistaken, that's what we're gonna hear. And I almost bet you if we had Herb Dennis in here, he'd say he needs them two correctional officers. So I'm certainly willing to listen, and if there's, but it's gonna be, you're gonna have to make a pretty tough case, I believe, to hold on to some of these positions.
I guess our choice, I mean, being new to this, I guess our choice is to cut positions that are vacant, or start cutting positions where
That are
people-
filled?
That are filled. And
That's a
if
scary.
I have that choice, it's gonna be one that's vacant. I don't wanna see anybody lose their job.
No.
I don't think that we need to stop thinking about an associate planner, but I think we should cut that for now.
I agree.
We have consensus on that.
And the two correctional officers, we get more, and I don't mean this in a bad way. You know, we just recognized our correctional officers here this morning. They do a great job, but I think that if you ask the employees, they'd rather have a pay raise than they would two more.
The only
Big.
thing is, and again, I couldn't speak to this, but the staffing levels that they have to have on the floor to meet whatever safety requirements, I'm not sure if they're above or below that. I don't know if you want to hear anything.
I thought we had asked that the last.
I don't believe her
Yeah,
weighed in.
I don't think so either, but we could certainly find that out, because
Yeah, I mean, we
clearly
can
it's a
get you some
24/7 operation, yeah.
That would be the only question, I'm not sure.
My recommendation would be to cut both of them. That's my recommendation.
No, I agree with you when you you know,
And if they hear about it and if they're watching, I hope if that's a safety issue, that they reach out to us. But if we don't hear anything, then I think we got it.
Okay. That brings us down to,
what, Mike's here. Mike, you wanna go ahead and talk about your
You
couple
wanna
of
go ahead and
positions? Look,
Tell us.
if there's a, it's your job to tell us what you think.
I know.
And then we'll have to deal with it later.
Well, as far as the wastewater one, and it's true, I've been here almost 5 years, and I've been doing that job. I think a lot of that is because of my background in water, wastewater, to be able to try to handle that. But obviously, when I started here, we were supposed to have those divisions filled. And we haven't had success doing that because we haven't been able to attract anybody. The concern with the water, wastewater is we've really turned that division around. There are a lot of people that we finally left because they just weren't doing their job. We've got a good crew and a lot of initiatives that we've started to fix a lot of stuff that just wasn't being taken care of. The money that's been spent, we've been fortunate with the ARPA. The thing you gotta remember with this division chief, water, wastewater, is we've got a huge project coming up with the Millington plant that is gonna be one of the solutions that I see in being able to get more revenue in this county, because we haven't had the growth that we needed to be able to offset these kind of expenses that we've got. So that project is gonna, and you need somebody to be able to do that. You gotta remember with what I've been, since I got here, we've assumed doing the enterprise lease. Now I'm in charge of a procurement person. When we had Jim, I was fine with him getting, now Dan's here, but now we've taken over the stormwater work too. So it hasn't been the situation where the last 5 years we've been doing the same stuff. More stuff's been put on our plate to do that. Now, you know, it was good when we got the deputy's position filled, but then that was less than a month before Marty retired. So I'm back now with 2 holes. And you think about environmental operations, they used to have 2 administrative staff. And a previous cut got rid of one of those administrators. So now we've got 2 people doing what 3 people used to do. And now you're talking about having 1 person do what 3 persons used to do. So it's one of those things where you get rid of that, not fill that position, and then we forget about how things were operated, we get by, and now it's just another reason to get rid of another person. So you're gonna have problems doing that, and being able to cover both positions is gonna be very difficult for me to do. I know when Shelley and I talked about when Jim left and not having the deputy position, we both agreed that was an impossible situation. So I've been able to, you know, hold things together. The problem when you lose that leadership is basically you revert the rest of the staff to just holding the line. You do the same thing day after day after day. You're not looking for opportunities to do things more efficiently, cheaper, look at new initiatives that are out there that can make the program better. That staff is just operating on a day-by-day basis. So nothing new happens. We just do what we need to do to get by because we don't have that liberty to be able to explore other opportunities. That's the situation you're gonna have there.
When we have these projects like you're referring to though, would we be better off to hire, because it seemed like to me, every one that I've ever been a part of, we hired an engineering firm to take it and run with it.
You do that, and that's the difference. It's one
Which
thing
is,
having,
which is,
yeah.
what I guess what I'm saying is a one-time expense versus hiring somebody that you're gonna be paying for years to come.
They're doing the hard part and you're only getting that part. That's reasonable to have someone. They come in, they do the job, then they walk away from it. While they're doing the job, there's a lot of back and forth and management of those consultants to do the thing. And when they leave, you still have the project you have to manage. So there's a lot of time that's spent with that. You know, being from that other side of the railroad tracks, I know what that's like. But when I was done with that project, I walked away and I was done with it. But that project stayed with the client, in this case Kent County, and you have to manage that project. There's making decisions, you know, they're not deciding everything for you. It's, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? How can we save money? Paying the bills, the funding issues, you know what a headache that can be with the type of funding that you've got to get to do that. It is a very, it doesn't just take the whole thing off your hands. There's a lot of things that go with those kind of projects that you don't see.
The truth of the matter is, I don't disagree with a word you
I
said.
know.
It's just the times are troubling right now.
The wastewater system that we're looking at up in Millington, or that we're trying to move forward with. That's probably, what, 2 years out?
Well, we're getting ready to start the design right now, so there's a lot of decisions we've got to make. I'm working on the memorandum of understanding between the developer, the town, and the county, so that we have that moving forward. There's going to be, we're doing the analysis right now on our sewer system to see how it can handle capacity. There's a lot of upfront work. If you remember that PowerPoint I did, at the end of it, there was a long list of things that have to be done. Make decisions. How are we going to finance it? How are we going to operate it? Because it's going to be a joint working relationship between the town and the county. And to be honest, it's going to be the first situation we've had where the county has the treatment plant, not the town, like we do, like happens in Rock Hall and Galena. So you've got a whole new initiative that's involved there in doing that. But the opportunity is there for bringing in a lot of new citizens to Kent County. It can bring revenue, helps the water waste, our water and wastewater system sewer, to bring in more customers, to get us off that support we need from the general fund. It's a huge, significant project, and I think it's got a lot of potential.
That all goes back to, you know, when you talk about this significant investment and we're bringing in citizens, you know, all of these projects started out, Rock Hall, Chestertown, they all start out, it's a significant, I mean, this is the problem that I have with, not, and it's not a problem, but we talk about economic development and growth, and it doesn't ever seem like to me that it becomes profitable. I mean, you know, we talk about we gotta have the growth, which I agree, we need people, right? But there's never an upside to it for government. I mean, what I'm saying is, you know, Rock Hall's having a difficult time budgetarily. Chestertown's having a difficult time budgetarily. You can see the situation that we're in. I mean, you're talking about, something that I don't even know that we've factored in to you know, looking forward to FY '25 is the payoff on anything that we're talking about, the payoff on, you know, our public, the sheriff's office, a payoff, or payment on this. You know, how long does it take for us as a county to have enough growth to even maintain the payment? I mean, if we're 2 years out, I'm guessing we're 4 years out from any positive cash flow for a project like this. And, you know, that's not even talking about a new school that people are talking about. I mean, this stuff keeps me up at night, and I just don't see, and maybe you can tell me that there is positive cash flow somewhere out there. But I don't see it. I mean, I don't see it.
Well, the differences we've got with this opportunity is it's, you know, the 301 corridor.
Right, yeah.
You've got developers who are already interested in. So you've got people who can potentially contribute to the upfront costs we got. There's also the unique opportunities of getting a lot of grant money to build the project. For example, we're practically getting the design paid for through a grant. So there you're offsetting those type of costs and bringing them in.
Still, at the end of it, Kent County citizens are gonna have to be making a payment on some sort of system. And we don't even know what unless you have some guesstimates on what that payment's gonna be. I mean, that's something that, you know.
On that treatment plant, a lot of that will be paid for through by the developers and their allocation fees and stuff like that.
Right. there'll be upfront costs there, plus they'll be reserving that capacity like they do now in our existing system. Remember the vacant lot fees that are paid to reserve that capacity? Because, like you said, you're gonna assume some debt on that. So for those people to reserve it, they don't just pay it and then they can sit on it. They've got to keep paying quarterly fees to cover that kind of debt service. So you build a lot of that into that discussion, and that's where we got to go. What we first did is decide what we have with the feasibility study, what is the plan, how are we going to do this, make it work, and then we've still got some money in that feasibility study where we can start looking at operating costs, because the plant we're talking about is very similar to the one up at the canal, Chesapeake City. So we've got those numbers we can work with to see where we're going with the thing. I remember we've had a discussion with a previous commissioner when we were looking at a project, and he basically wanted all the developers paid up and going before we did it, so it was sold to them right away. There's always a risk with some of this stuff. But we don't have a lot of things going on in the county to generate the kind of revenue that we need to get to offset this.
You could very easily make the argument that the fact that we haven't had anything going on to amount to anything in the past is probably one of the reasons that we find ourselves in the position we're in. I don't know, I've heard the estimates that those two distribution centers that they're talking about building out there on 301 would generate $750,000 a year in property taxes. Now that's a bump. That gets your attention.
Yeah, one of the things, that's why one example would be Queen Anne, has a huge commercial district. That generates, when you get a commercial district, you generate a lot of that revenue, and you don't have the demand on schools, or police protection as much, things like that to do that. Here's an opportunity to attract that kind of potential to do that, in addition to bringing more residents in. And bringing those residents in because those potential jobs are there, brings them in, and then they start participating in the economy in Kent County, and that generates more jobs and so on.
I would venture to say that if we don't, you got one or two ways to raise revenue. That's grow the economy or raise taxes.
Correct.
And if we start raising taxes enough to accommodate all this stuff, all these requests, most of us won't be able to live here.
And that's not gonna do anything for Jamie's department at all.
So how long has this division chief for wastewater been open?
Well,
Since 2016 or 16?
because the superintendent was an interim one.
Right. So he was doing two jobs.
I think, my personal feeling is Kent County has to stop saying no to smart growth. And that project up there on 301, from what I know at this point, needs to take place. And that's the only way this county's gonna survive. We gotta grow it in that area there and anything out to Wharton that we can grow, which has been identified as growth areas.
Correct.
I don't have a problem leaving the division chief for wastewater in there, but I would like to see if someone couldn't maybe oversee the other thing, the environmental operations, at least until we have a brighter light. I'm assuming that would be an
Is that
easier.
the roads division?
That's,
No.
Marty.
Environmental.
Oh, Marty.
Yeah.
I would think that would be a little easier to oversee.
What about one supervisor that could oversee both? So they would have to have the qualifications of, basically somebody who could handle a heavy project like the Millington wastewater treatment plant upgrade, but also oversee the other division. Is that a possibility?
I guess you could always explore that. But the difficulty we've had just hiring a water wastewater person. Now you're adding that onto it, and that kind of expertise is going to come with a little price too.
I'm just throwing out an idea, but I think with environmental ops, that's could be more of a learned skill set than something, like, for the water wastewater, that's something, you've got to have qualifications that come, you know, you're studying engineering in college, et cetera, but environmental ops, I feel like, is more of a learned skill set. Would you agree with that, or no?
I think the operations that there is pretty much set as far as what's going on. The one difficulty I've had is Marty did such a good job. I really had very little to do with what his operation is. And he assumed a lot of the administrative responsibilities that when they lost the one position. So the other person, administrative person in that area handles pretty much the public landings approach of it. So it's going to have to be some work to try to pull all those things together. And he left a good summary of kind of things, but there's a lot of reporting that's required. We still have permits for the landfills that have to be maintained and things like that. So it'll have to be something that'll have to be picked up on.
Is it possible that there's now a front desk person at DPW? Is it possible that that person could pick up some of the administrative?
They could, we've talked about that as a possibility. So, and she's already doing some of that with the disposals coupons, so.
I just want to back up and say, when I was talking about what I was talking about, I wasn't saying that the 301 corridor wasn't a good place for development.
Right.
I wanted to, but I just, you know, and I, like Ronnie and Buck, I mean, we hear what you're saying, we do, and we wish we could hire them, but we just, I mean, we gotta, you see where we're at. I mean, is there any other way to get creative with maybe some people that we have employed now? I know they'd be putting more on their plate, but I mean, I'm just trying here, Mike, don't take this the wrong way.
With that position, water, wastewater.
I mean, I can
You
see
need
that
an
that's
engineering
difficult. I can, I
background.
mean, I'm very good friends with a lot of the people that do wastewater in this county. And they're all deeply, deeply concerned that there's nobody that wants to get into that. And there's nobody coming up in the ranks, and a lot of these guys are thinking about retirement, I'm not saying that. And it's concerning. I don't know what, maybe AI will fix it.
That's why I got a little bothered by the fact that we got a fellow out there cutting grass with Mark Dixon that has a wastewater treatment plant operator's license, and you just don't pick them off a tree when you need them. They're hard to come by.
No, a lot of them have, came up in the 70s and things like that when it was a popular type thing.
Yeah.
But the technology has moved so much forward. I mean, when I started, you had a switch. It was off, manual, automatic, and then you had a little light that would go off on it. Nowadays, it's all computers and everything like that. So it was bad enough for someone who's in high school, telling his friends, oh, I want to be a wastewater treatment plant operator someday. No, they're not doing that. They want to be a sheriff or an astronaut or whatever. But it's hard to find those kind of people that are going to get into it because it takes a lot of knowledge to run these plants now.
It really does.
Yeah, the technology so much, and the water has to be cleaner. There's more things that have to be removed, so it's a big challenge. And there are a lot of positions out there that we're competing with to try to fill them.
And it's a 24/7 job.
That's the other
It really
thing.
is.
Yeah.
These guys, it's a lot of times you gotta get called on.
Right.
What I'd like to maybe suggest is that we continue to work in a direction to hire a division chief for the wastewater system. And the division chief for environmental operations, let Mike talk to his existing staff and see if we can limp along, at least for this next budget cycle. And if we can't, then you just need to come tell us.
Okay.
Maybe some of that environmental operations, they oversaw the public landings and they oversaw the dumps and, the transfer station. Recycling, but Tina's pretty knowledgeable. She's been dealing with that stuff for
Oh, yeah.
a long, long time too.
The public landings, I'm not that concerned
No,
about.
that'll take care of
Right.
itself. When they get out of, that somebody misuses them, we'll get complaints. You'll know when that happens.
Well, the one thing along that line is the enforcement issue.
Yeah.
That's the thing that we don't really have a handle on.
Right, that's something we're gonna have to address, because right now in code it says that the Division Chief for Environmental Operations shall be deputized by the sheriff. And of course, that worked well for us when Marty Holden was the division chief, but now not so much, so.
But those
I'm
things,
thinking of, I got a good candidate for that. Jim Buckinord would be a good deputy sheriff.
If that's good or bad.
Is this something that, not that I want to put anything on Brian Foreman's plate, but is it something that he could monitor as well? And, you know, I'm thinking that, okay, so we got this division chief for environmental operations. That's 134,488. If we can, you know, find someone in your current shop, Mike, that can oversee that and run everything properly, give them like a little bump for their extra work. And the same thing maybe if the enforcement officers from planning and zoning could do something with the landings.
Yeah, I
As far as
understand.
enforcement goes, it might take care of that. You know, there for a while, the sheriff's office was doing some of the enforcement too.
Yeah,
but-
the story I hear it was difficult for planning and zoning, just trying to cover that. And with the sheriff's office, it was, you guys had a
We had-
priority what you were
we had-
doing.
we
This
had
was a little
enough on
bit
our plate.
secondary, and it wasn't getting covered probably as
How
well.
many citations are usually issued in
That I don't know.
no,
Not many, I don't think.
when this thing first turned around, nobody cared about those public landings years ago, and
Right.
people did whatever they wanted. It was a total fiasco. When they changed everything and started having some rules and regulations of what you could do, what you couldn't do, it was some rough sledding for a few years till people got used to it. I'm around them a lot, just because of the nature of living in Rock Hall. I was worked on the water and around the water. I don't see that today. I think people I'm not saying people don't get, that they do some things wrong once in a while, but it's nowhere's near what it used to be. I mean, people have gotten used to the rules and regulations and the way the county runs those things, and I don't see the misuse of those landings, nowhere's close to what it used to be years ago.
I agree, and whether it's a function of the enforcement that's been done, that people have adjusted to the fact that I need to follow the rules.
Yeah.
And when you take that away, then people think that, the biggest problem we run into is when you're not doing it, somebody complains because so-and-so's been getting away with this thing, and that's when the pot gets really stewed, so.
They just need to be trained on that issue.
And we have that public landing board that, all of those boys on there have something to do with the water business or they use the public landings a lot. And, they actually, I know for a fact, they actually help sometimes explain to people, look, you can't do that.
Right.
It's nothing like as bad. I think they're run pretty darn good now. A lot of that could be when Marty used to keep a hammer on everybody, but.
Yeah, he would go out on weekends, because that's when your big use is.
Right.
And he was putting time on weekends, checking the different locations.
And some of it was complaint-driven, so he would respond to complaints.
Yeah, and it could become complaint driven, because I don't see the violations nowhere like they used to.
Yeah, he hasn't had really, I'm trying to think, maybe having to go to court on anything particular like that hasn't happened. It's usually resolved before it gets to that point.
Exactly, yeah. And if somebody got a ticket for not having a sticker, then the remedy to avoid going to court is to go buy a sticker.
Right.
Well, it's a lot cheaper to buy a sticker than
Right.
Yep.
take a day off of
And
work.
the other thing is for someone to provide that enforcement, you don't have to be a former police officer. We were fortunate, Marty was. But it could be a citizen who gets sworn in and just has the ability to issue a civil citation.
Yeah, to meet the code requirements in order to issue the citations.
So it might be another one of those things, as far as the landings go, that maybe someone in your shop might want to get a little bump in pay and take on that responsibility.
Something that could be explored.
So what are you saying there? Would you want to leave the divisions chief in there for now and
I think
take
that
the
that's
rest
going to
out?
become a very important position, especially with the development that is proposed up in Millington.
I mean, I think that's good.
And I'm hoping that, I know I'm asking a lot of Mike and his shop, but if we could get by, or at least try to for now,
Okay.
with maybe the young lady that's very good at this, and maybe find someone for the enforcement on the landings.
And I tell you, I think the majority of the infractions that were noticed at these public landings, a lot of them, you have a crew that goes around and maintains them. And they would report back when they, if they saw something out of the way, I think. Now, Marty did a lot of it too on his own, I'm not saying, but the guys that go around and maintain those landings and cut the grass and all that kind of stuff, they're the one, they're there, they're noticing those.
If you get a trailer, like somebody just left a trailer there for a week or something like that, that's the issue they'll spot. I think a lot of the things that he found was on the weekends where you get people that are not used to it, they're coming down here visiting, and they buy a trailer so they can,
Yeah, and
get in the water
especially,
there.
right, if they're not parking properly, which jams up the rest of the.
That was always, because we don't have a
Well,
lot
it
of
depends on the crowd population too.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true, you're right.
those people coming down from Pennsylvania.
You're catching a lot of fish or a lot of
Where
crabs.
the rockfish are,
Then
exactly.
there'll be a lot of people using those landings.
And we don't want people to think that we're not enforcing our rules either, so.
That's right.
No, that's.
You know
that's
that.
right.
Because they will get crazy then.
Yeah, it would get worse.
All right,
you
in
wanna
the
touch on the
spirit
other
of
two?
time, let's move on to
So are you okay with that plan of action for
Yeah.
now?
Okay, we'll work on that.
all right.
So the MEO three is filling a position that was recently vacated by a retirement, Al's retirement. And Mike Usselton moved up into Al's position that left that position open to be filled. So it's a rather recent position that opened up. The MEO three is, we have two MEO twos. We're talking about driving the vehicles, and, the recycling deliveries and things like that. With the MEO three, they would be the substitute for the crew leader when he's on vacation or sick or out, to keep the crews going, because this is a daily type operation. So that's why we want to do an MEO three
Is
back to
somebody
it.
internal ready to be promoted to we don't usually advertise for an MEO three, we usually
They,
advertise for a one or a two.
they still need some training. That's not, certainly not one of the issues. I mean, if there's somebody willing to step up, but right now, given the way the economy is, you go after what you can get. If somebody applies, then we can do an MEO two or MEO three. But that's the reasoning behind it. Aside from that, if that doesn't work, would be to just try to hire an MEO two with a reduced salary.
I was gonna say, should we be advertising for like MEO 1, 2/3?
Well, you need the two for the type of equipment
Or
they're
at
at,
least
with those
two or
roll-offs and
three.
things like that, yeah.
Maybe we should open that up.
But again, that was the reasoning behind Marty having an MEO three, was sort of he would still be in charge of the two people when the crew leader is not available. So you get a little bit of a ladder there that you want in place. So that's the options there.
So I suppose the question would be then, having said all that, is that department staffed appropriately? Could they drop a position?
Well, the problem is you're hauling constantly, and you got to plan for when other people are out. So you've got those trucks that are, doesn't stop as far as the recycling and the trash that comes in. You've got to haul them. That vehicle that Peterbilt we got, how beat up that thing is. That's the kind of use that we get hauling trash to the landfill, all over to Ridgely and get that. So
Do we have an applicant pool currently?
I don't have anything right for the three yet, not at this point. Yeah, there's always the option somebody might be interested from one of the other divisions.
And I think the same question would be for the MEO 1 for roads. Are we right-staffed right now?
Well, the MEO one is, we've got one person who's out on long-term disability. That hurts me. one vacancy that's just recently opened up. The other issue I've got is the weed control. I've lost, I can't hire, couldn't, well, my weed control leader is gone. I don't know if he'll come back because of health issues. And last year, we couldn't hire the technician because we need 2 people. We had to borrow someone from the roads. Unfortunately, I can't get anybody from roads to take over the lead position because of the certification requirements that you have to go through. Because you need to be fully certified if you're going to be working on land other than ours, you know, the state roads or private property kind of thing. So what I was trying to do was try to get somebody from roads to come over, but I'm not having much success. So I've got one position vacant, another potentially becoming vacant, and trying to fill 2 positions on weed control, so.
So do you think it's right, having said that, do you think it's right staffed? I mean, if the division were to go down 2 positions, let's say, is there work that could not be done?
Well, the weed control's not being done. I mean, and I don't know, have an answer to that because of trying to get people to do it. The 2 people that are certified are Dan, who runs the division, and Steve, who's the crew leader. So,
Right.
and we're talking about weed control being a part-time
Right.
position at a low grade.
So if 2 MEOs could do that, say, for the summer months or the growing season, can you afford to lose anybody else? Would it impact operations?
Yeah, because I'd be down 2 more people, so I'm
Right.
actually looking at 4 people down.
Right.
And we have 2 crews, you know, we were
That's
able to
where
get.
I'm going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we got the second grade all, so now we can try to catch up on these cross pipes that we have to keep replacing. And the one crew kind of gets some of the greenhorns in it. They do like the tree trimming and dirt work. Then you have the more advanced crew that does some of the bigger pipe jobs and things like that. So as these people move up, they can move over to fill the vacancies in the other crew. So we need to keep moving in. And if you remember, we've had a lot of turnover in that group because of competition from other counties and state losing them. Fortunately, we've done some adjustments in the salary ranges there. In the past, that's kind of stemmed that. But we're not talking one person here. We're talking potential, dealing with 4 that I've got to fill.
So the weed control, is that an MEO 1?
It's a position that doesn't require an MEO.
It used to be a thing unto itself. I mean, we had this little division, this little part of Public Works, and then it went away, and then we stood it back up again. And basically, you know, State Highways, they really wanted, they were pushing for us to stand it up because they want somebody in Kent County, they pay us well to do the weed control and pay us for the program. But if we're not doing it, then they've got to find somebody else to do it. And so that's not their preference. Their preference is to pay us to do it. And because we currently don't have those positions staffed, we're talking about the possibility of using other folks in Public Works during the growing season, basically, to fill those positions.
Or, I mean, would it, if we say that we can't staff it, will they just then hire a private entity to do it? Is that?
Well, we basically just notify them that we can't provide that service, and they're gonna have to hire contractors to try to get.
That's what I'm
Yeah, they may go to another county that
Yeah.
has staff and have them
They
come
like to
over and
do
do
that.
that. That's happened. But then we won't be able to do the private work either. As well as, now, our crews could handle like spraying around the signs and things like that, guardrails on county roads, which is what were already doing. Actually, we were trying to do more of that professionally when we had the weed control, rather than the county doing a lot of that. So, I mean, if you're talking one position, okay, it's filling a position, and we muddle on by. But I've got a bigger problem in that department. That's my problem. And I don't have a solution at this point. So, having another
Thought it was
warm
gonna be
body.
easy before you came up here and
I
sat down
know,
and started
sorry.
talking, like, to be totally honest with you.
78 people, I got my problems every day. And unfortunately, like I said, this certification thing, Dan gave me the 2 books. I mean, there's 2 separate books. You have to take the exam and everything. I do it every month, but it's difficult for a lot of people to do that. And there's a lot of not interest in doing that.
I was gonna say, it can't be that hard, I passed it, so, it's not that hard.
Well, you have the right-of-way one, and then there's the basic one, and it's, I started looking through the thing, and I said, "Oh, I didn't want to do it." But, so,
My question for you, which one could you do without, MEO 3 or MEO 1?
I prefer, because of not doing the one above it, to have an MEO 3,
To have or to.
to have. If you're gonna pause on the one, give me the support I need below to keep things going, and I just have to live with out the MEO.
We don't want to do that,
No.
but I don't think we're gonna have any choice.
So my question is, if they were to cut one, MEO 1, is it, they work in pairs, right?
Well, it's
So-
two different crews, so one crew will be a little bit more, limited in what they can do. Because when you have a bigger group like that, and a lot of these guys have a lot of accumulated vacation, sick leave, when you do an analysis on staffing, you include a certain amount of time people are off, so many hours of vacation time a year, a portion of sick leave, and then you see how you can staff. Because you're still gonna have that same job you've gotta do every day. You need the coverage to do that.
You could go down one person without going down two. If,
Well, you gave me the choice between an MEO 3 and a 1. I'm going for the 3 because of the prior discussion.
So now we're saying keep the division chief and the MEO 3 and get rid of the rest?
We're keeping the division chief for wastewater, and the division chief for environmental operations is being, not funded currently. And the MEO 3 will be funded. And the MEO 1 will not be funded.
Well, not, right.
Doesn't mean that those positions go away forever,
They're out of the budget.
but they're out of the budget for this year.
So we would show them as
Unless-
vacant.
Uh,
I'd show them not in.
You wouldn't show, I know what we used to do, we'd still have the position there, but just we didn't fund it for that year. So we'd still show as a potential position. So the memory doesn't work against us.
I can leave the name in there, but there won't be any dollars.
And
Right,
for
right.
clarification, we'd love to find somebody who would volunteer to be sworn in as an inspector of the landings.
Yeah, that we'll have to explore.
Retirees who are looking for something to do out there.
Why are you looking over at me?
Oh, I see. I got you.
I've written all the tickets I'm ever gonna write.
Now, if you want to sweeten the pot, we could take the MEO 3 and go to a 2, so you save a little bit more if you want to do that.
How much would that save?
I have to look, the difference is probably about 5%.
yeah, it's not gonna
It's
be
not-
a
it's-
ton.
It's not gonna be
It's not a
much.
significant amount.
3,000.
I
something like
think,
that.
just leave the MEO 3 in there. I mean, we've been pretty harsh with Mike here, so. Not because we want to, Mike.
I know.
From time to time, we have talked about the maintenance crews being combined into one, the grounds and building. I don't know if you're interested in that conversation, but
The what?
the maintenance crews being combined into one crew. So instead of having buildings maintenance and grounds maintenance, it would be one group of people that would just be subdivided. I would envision if we ever did that, it would be similar to roads where, okay, morning meeting, now this crew go do this, that, you're at Morton Park cutting fields, this crew, you're doing whatever. Is there any benefit to that? If you're not interested in discussing it, you're not interested, but it's something we've
I
talked
would
about.
be interested in maybe talking about that, because I think that anytime we can coordinate these different groups, we may provide a better
Yeah.
avenue of addressing issues from time
Yeah,
to time.
this has been bounced around, and even when Jim was here, we talked a lot about that. The dynamics have changed a lot since then, because now we have the janitorial contract, which eliminated 3 positions last year.
Right.
So that crew now is more specialized in doing repair-type work, other than the one janitorial person who deals with the detention center. So you've got a more specialized group there. And then the grounds group is basically accustomed to doing the type of services they have there. The fact that they're under the Department of Public Works is when, different times in the change of the seasons, I can pull them in to do the type of work so that we do that mix-up. They just went through, we painted the fence down there at the courthouse. That was done by the grounds crew. Normally, that would have been maintenance.
Then they painted a bunch of walls and stuff.
Did
in
the
here.
walls, yeah. So I think from the dynamics and the way those groups are organized and the personalities, to me, in my opinion, after 5 years of working with them, is that they work better separately with the ability to bring them together as needed for the type of projects we got. So it has the advantages of focusing on what they need to focus on, but when we need them to work together, we can do that. That's,
You like it the way it is, right?
I really like it the way it is.
Okay.
I mean, and what I've done, Dan is slowly he brought in where he's going to be handling the grounds and building maintenance like Jim used to do. So he'll be the one directly overseeing them on a basis, and I think that'll be good for him to have that situation going for him. So, okay?
And I don't know what your schedule looks like, but at some point, are we gonna be talking about vehicles leased?
Depends on how far and how, yeah, I mean, it's on the list.
It's the next one down after allocations. Unless
So-
you wanna,
If you can maybe hang around a little bit, so.
we can talk about it next. I mean, we have one more position on the list. And then
I
we'll
was good,
switch
but
right
Bill
over
is
to
here.
that.
Bill just came in if they want to talk about the associate planner. I saw the smile.
Oh,
We've
I'm
already
sorry.
talked about that.
Yeah, yeah, we've already talked about it, Bill. That's what happens when you're not here. I think what we've talked about, Bill, unless you have a lot of heartburn, is forgoing that for now, leaving the position available, but we're just trying to get to the number we need to be at. It won't go away totally, but at least not for this budget cycle coming up.
If I can say a word, just to sort of explain things, so you understand the context. So, you know, the department is really, you know, we're a Maryland county. There's an enormous amount of responsibilities and programs we oversee, and it's a team of 9, and we really focus on what most people call as current planning, right? Permits, zoning, hearings. We don't get to, you know, do things in the comp plan and, you know, do environmental programs and biological studies and all. I mean, if you go through the comprehensive plan, there are literally hundreds of goals that, I mean, it's understandable. We don't have the budget for that. We don't have the staffing for that. But the hope with this kind of position is to do some of those bigger role things that, you know, as a Maryland County, we're hopeful that we can do. And I understand where we are, so I'm not surprised. But I appreciate it staying on the books. That'd be great. So hopefully we get through
We're just in a tough
to
place.
sunnier days. So, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
There's just one last position up there, the administrative specialist in the sheriff's office.
I think if Sheriff Hickman was here, we could ask him about that, but I mean, maybe we could talk to him about it next week when he comes in
Table
closed
until
session.
next week. Okay. All right, do you want to move
I
on?
mean, I know what it is. It's somebody that answers the phone and does filing and, you know, right now that's vacant, so.
Okay. Do you want to skip over allocations and talk about the vehicles while Mike's here?
That way we can maybe free Mike up.
So that he can go do some wastewater.
So, in your books, it's under the leased vehicle tab.
The only questions I have, Mike, about the vehicles, I heard in one presentation not long ago that we have 136 county-owned vehicles, not to include dump trucks and great alls.
The heavy stuff, yeah.
The heavy stuff. And I understand how enterprise works, and I understand the benefit of getting rid of vehicles, like, for instance, the paramedic vehicle. with 38,000 miles on it. So 2016, I get it. But this might not be the right year to replace some of these vehicles that maybe we should maybe hold on to for another year. And I also, being around the county and seeing different things, I also many times question, there's a lot of vehicles that sit and never move. And I've mentioned this before. I stopped out and saw Sheriff Hickman the other day about an issue. And while I was there, and not that they don't need some transportation vehicles, but there's 5 correction vehicles sitting there, 3 SUVs and 2 cars. And I can tell you from when I was there as a sheriff, and I look at the transportation that they provide in their weekly stat report, they're not transporting many people. It just seems like to me that we have an awful lot of vehicles and all of them look like they're in pretty good shape, and they're not being utilized. There's a 3/4-ton pickup that sits at the Offices of Emergency Services. Now, yes, they need a pickup when they haul their trailers once or twice a year. But I don't know that they need one there 365 days a year. So, I mean, wouldn't it be better to have a pool of vehicles that, not necessarily for your operation, but for some of these other agencies to call on when they need it, just like you do here at the Commissioner's office? I mean, it's nice in good times that all these vehicles are available, but they're being underutilized.
Yeah, when we look at the vehicles that we've got, the 2 things we look at is the year, trying to get, working through the list to get the old ones turned over, because there's safety issues, and normally an older vehicle would have a lot of miles on it. The second thing is the mileage associated with them. With what we're doing in this year, if you remember, I think we had the discussion when the business plan for the enterprise was that replacement of all the vehicles in a 5-year cycle. And the 1 year, we weren't able to do that with the recession hit and everything. So if we get all the vehicles that are on that current list, we still have 17 remaining vehicles that are owned by the county that haven't been able to be incorporated in. So what we're going to be doing is looking at some of the newer vehicles that were on the first year of the lease. When that time comes up, we would continue to pay the lease payments on them past the 5 years, so that we hold those in the system and then play catch up on some of these other ones. So we're going to factor that into what we're doing there. Public Works does not get into trying to decide into the business of the detention center or the sheriff as to which vehicles should be coming out. We just make those recommendations to try to have them take a look at the age and the mileage in which they'd be doing anyway, and getting those out. So those selections are made pretty much by the department. I think it was 2 years ago, Shelley put an initiative out to all the different departments to take a look at their vehicles to see which ones are not really getting used. And as a result of that, I think we probably had, I'm going to say 5 to 7 vehicles that were moved between different departments and transferred to take the place of a vehicle that might have been leased. So the effort is there to do that. But so the challenge is going to be the departments deciding if they don't need those. I heard the story too about the pickup truck. The main reason is to be able to tow that trailer, emergency trailer around. But if you don't have an emergency, it doesn't get a lot of use. We did pick up a detention center vehicle. It was a black, I forget what model it was, but we had that for about 6 months, and it was a lemon. It was falling apart, so I'd end up going to the junkyard on that. So some of those are there. One of the questions in terms of pooling vehicles, that was the debate as to who's going to be in charge of managing the pool. because the biggest use of the pool is here at 400, with the different staff being able to use that. But finding somebody that would be able to manage that type of thing. So those options are out there. I don't have any problem with it. I'm trying to fit what was the original business plan to try to get that turnover to get where we're at. And we're behind the curve, like I said. So, get that. There are sometimes decisions in terms of age and mileage, because examples would be, I know Wayne had a vehicle that was his transportation car, but he didn't have the miles on it that obviously they were having with the EMS vehicles. And I know the sheriff's office had a couple vehicles like that that don't get the heavy usage that they do where the regular staff's doing them. So it's a back and forth on the thing, but I don't really have the control over choosing which one's got to go and which isn't, because I don't know the operations of those different departments. So,
Well, I'm gonna apply my common sense here. I don't know whether it's really common sense or not, but to me, it just seems to be reasonable. We had already talked about the commissioner's office, we're not getting a vehicle there, so that's already come out, correct?
It has not come out. We said we were gonna revisit the whole list together, so if you take it out, it'll reduce the 3
I
million.
agree with the sheriff.
I don't think we need to replace a Jeep that has 38,000 miles on it.
yeah, the issue with the Patriot was when it was used for multiple people, as I understand, and I've ever been in it, is the leg room in the back was pitiful.
Well, we'll all suck it up.
We don't have to suck it
That's
up. I
right.
mean, we're asking everyone to suck it up. this
Absolutely,
year.
so we will definitely do it.
And the thing just to keep in mind is it's that number in green is the savings. So what we're really saving, if you cut all these vehicles out, it would take 193,000 out of the budget, because the cost that comes out is the lease payment, not the value of the car.
Just for 6 months.
Well, we're estimating that we're not gonna get those cars on July 1. So
Yeah,
with
we're
the
not.
supply chain, the cost is, we figured an average of halfway through. But I just don't want you to be confused by the higher numbers of vehicles. The saving is that column in green. The most, if we cut every car, the most we could take out of the budget is 193,000.
Every little bit helps, I think.
That's
So
right.
Oh, absolutely.
have
And if
to,
we cut half of
absolutely.
them, we'd have $100,000.
Yep.
So,
I think the commissioner's office vehicle, we're gonna just keep what we have for now.
Yep.
And I'm just making a suggestion here, guys.
I agree.
I'm hearing yeses, so
I'm
I'm
gonna let you
ready.
do it, and if I have disagree, I'll tell you. You go ahead.
Detention center, from what I see sitting there in the parking lot, we don't need any more vehicles there.
Do we have?
Mike and if you know something I don't know, you say.
Oh, there's a detention Explorer.
Yeah, it's only got 35, just almost under 36,000 miles. And there's no known issues, yeah.
Did that get added to the list? Yeah.
Jeannie,
Don't
this is
know
from
mine.
the list I guess you sent over, but
Okay. I'm not gonna argue there, it's not on my list.
third one from the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh, you know
That's the
what?
van, I think they need that, because it's in bad shape, the one they have.
There's no known issues. Only has 38,000,
On the van?
yeah. for
The
parking lot.
van, yeah, the van was one,
Is that the
was
same
one with the
list as on here?
Patriot, had been bumped, I think, 2 years in a row because of the year of it.
Yep.
So we wanted to get that on this time. Consider that's a passenger van, just from a safety aspect. They're carting people around. Might be time to replace
And what's the
that.
current year of the van they have?
2008.
2008.
2008.
About 29,000.
29,684
Yeah.
miles on it, Sheriff.
You know,
Doesn't get a
it's
lot.
kind of one of these situations where if you don't use a vehicle, it just starts to deteriorate. You know, you got ball joints, and you got
Yep.
all kinds of stuff that are gonna get bad, and I would think, for $12,000 annual cost, am I looking at that correctly?
No, it'd be 6,100, that's in the budget. The first
For the
column.
For
the
6 months.
Yeah,
Because they won't get it until,
we only
Annual.
we budgeted a 6-month figure, so
Gotcha.
what's in the budget is that figure in green, so that's what would be coming out.
okay, so, I think we should leave the Parks and Rec vehicle in there. Because I don't think you're gonna be hauling folks in that you don't want any issues.
One of the big things, advantages with getting a lot of these new vehicles was the backup cameras. That's a big safety issue, and the blind spot So those are big things we have.
Emergency services, we've already taken that vehicle out. And
Detention center, you took.
the sheriff's office, I think we've already cut 2 of those Tahoes. If we haven't, we need to.
Yeah, I think we talked about taking off, basically the bottom 2.
The bottom two?
Which would be the 2000, well, I guess that's where we got into a little bit of a discussion, because the bottom 2 have the least amount of miles, and they're the oldest, but do they need to be replaced?
The cost is the
One of them I
same.
used to drive, and it has 80,000 miles on it currently. And
2014.
I know that's not part of the enterprise plan,
This sheet has the mileage, if you want to see it.
but it's just not, it's probably got more than that on it now.
It says 81,800.
So the cost in the budget is the same, they're all 18,900, so Dennis could, you can have a conversation, but
I
any
thought-
2 that you take out are gonna cost the same.
Already had the conversation.
Okay, so which ones are coming out?
Bottom
Last
2.
2.
Bottom 2,
Okay.
okay. All right.
So we're keeping the Crown Vic.
No, the Crown Vic's gonna be one of the ones that's
Yeah,
gonna go.
I think that, I have that one listed as the number one to go.
The bottom 2 are the Chevy Tahoe.
It's the 2 Chevy Tahoes.
Right.
That's the ones that are staying.
Oh, they're staying, okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you ranked them by number 1 was the one to go. Okay, I'm with you.
Okay.
The planning vehicle, didn't they say they didn't need a vehicle? Didn't planning say they didn't need a vehicle?
I'm not sure. I'm sure we could ask Mr. Mackey,
That's one Blaze Jack's.
right down the hall.
We know what he's gonna say.
That's for that new
All
position.
right, I guess it's got 83,000 miles on
Got
it.
it.
It doesn't say that there's any
Well,
issues with it.
but I do-
It's a 2016, I think.
The one that gets the big use of the inspector going around, Brian.
So you think
pretty
it should be
sure.
replaced?
What do you think about the planning vehicle?
First off, they're gonna have to train them. I don't think it's, I don't think it's gonna need it.
When they say it's a planning vehicle, is that what the enforcement officers and stuff use?
They won't go in the academy until January.
I'm not afraid with cutting that one with that those mileage on it.
So that one can come out too. Number 5. Right? Is that
If,
one here?
if we don't approve that position, yeah.
What is environmental ops?
Until
That's
Till they get, come
uh,
out, which,
FY
you won't get them.
Marty's.
But if we
Project we were
don't
talking
approve
about.
till January.
Well, if we don't have Marty and we don't have anybody
So
to
you wanna
replace
keep
him, we
that?
probably don't need the vehicle, do we?
For now.
That wasn't his.
That was
vehicle.
just common sense there, talking, I'm sorry.
True, I guess I could give his vehicle to somebody else. They'll fight over it because it's EO1.
He just feels he needs to ask for it, but he's,
Got it.
he's not there.
Sheriff?
That position could be highlighted.
We were talking about the environmental ops vehicle, that was Marty's vehicle. And since Marty's gone and we're not replacing Marty, do we need a new vehicle?
Well, it could certainly be put on hold for right now.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean,
I
yeah.
don't think we need a new vehicle now, and if we need a vehicle, I would suggest we go out to the detention center and say, Warden, which one do you want to give up? Because having 5 sit there, plus they have a transport van around back, I believe.
We have a master list, and Mike, if you could give me a copy of the master list, maybe the 2 of us could sit down and we could talk about, go through it with a fine tooth comb.
I just have a hard time with all these vehicles sitting and never,
No,
I'm telling you, I used to watch out my window, and they never moved.
Right. No,
And I want to be
Yeah.
supportive of our correctional folks, but,
the environmental ops one, because
mean,
it's replacing a
let's look at all of them.
350,
yeah.
probably
Just
had the
not
plow
there.
package on it with the
Let's sit
spreader,
down and look
because Marty's crews in the wintertime
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of the parking lots and things like that. So I have a feeling, not seeing all the detail in that, I think that's also, because you have some aftermarket equipment, I think that's the plow and the spreader.
Mm-hmm.
That was the advantage of that one.
I bet you're right, yeah.
We're talking
We'll
about the
take a
one-
chance on we won't have any
Environmental
snow
ops.
this year as well. Hopefully that'll save us money
I'm
too.
gonna hold you
but
to that.
Albert, are you suggesting we cut that one?
I would suggest we could, yeah. Or put it on,
What, what do you have currently? And maybe you already said this.
Well, the one that's there, what we have currently is it'll replace a 2016 F-350.
Which, with how many miles on it?
71,599.
Do you know what the pickup over at Emergency Management, you know, is that a 250 or 350?
It's a 250. It would handle these parking lots.
Yeah. So the other problem we found was some of with the change in the design of the vehicles, our old plows aren't fitting the frames of the new ones, which forces us to get the new Boss plate.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah, of course.
Now,
Very
if you were to use
well
that
played
vehicle, that
to the vehicle
F-250 that
companies.
OES has, you could just put the plow on there when you need it. You wouldn't run,
I mean,
Winter versus summer.
yeah, I
Right.
guess you could, yeah. It would have, you still have part of the attachments on it to be able to mount it quick.
but that's the kind of
Take
thing
the
that I'm
spreader
talking
off.
about trying to do, is try to share a little bit of some of these.
Yeah, I'm open to if, you know, emergency management's willing to let us have it, use it, we'll use it more often and then when they need it, you know, they'll have a set of keys and to tow
Agreed.
the trailer around or whatnot.
Right.
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right, so I guess environmental ops comes out.
What about the building maintenance one, Mike, that only has 33,000 on it?
No known issues.
No known issues?
I'm guessing it's just the rotation one. It's in the rotation now, right?
Because it's a 2016, so
It's a 2016, the oldest in the fleet, other than when we don't include the 2008. We've gotten everything up to 2015, so it's newer and newer. That one, that's got aftermarket building maintenance, that doesn't have the aftermarket. So that would just be a regular truck.
Since we got rid of staff, we downsized, do we have any surplus vehicles there?
I think we took some out,
No?
yeah.
Okay.
So building maintenance, I'm having a hard time understanding why we need a one-ton pickup.
That one I gotta refresh my memory on it. We've got a one-ton, it's a 250 though.
it's a 250 now, but the replacement is calling for a 1-ton.
Yeah.
The 250 is a 3/4 ton. Sometimes, like you had said though, Mike, sometimes you can buy a 1-ton cheaper than you can a 3/4 ton.
Yeah, because it's just the spring load and everything. Typically with the building maintenance, they'll have the saddle package with the utility beds on them and things like that, and then be able to handle some, you know, loading stuff
With
on
this
it.
mileage though, I don't know that,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that can probably wait another year at least.
We could make that wait another year, because, again, the approach, you know, we started this whole thing was
Yeah,
trying to
right,
catch
and
up.
look, don't think that I don't appreciate your
no.
approach as
I'm
well,
with you.
I understand.
So we can make do that way.
That planning vehicle, we never,
My numbers are blurred here.
it says that it's a 2000, looks like 16 Patriot
Yeah,
with like
83,000.
83,000 miles on it, 83,667.
If you start having maintenance issues with that, it's gonna cost you, because it's a Jeep.
Yeah. I think that's one of the not wants.
Nothing against a Jeep, but
Well, we don't want to put
they're
good money
ex-
after bad either.
they're expensive to work on. So maybe we leave that one alone.
Maybe we leave it alone. Do you think that could be one maybe we could find elsewhere
It's possible.
in the pool of vehicle share for Mike? That
It's possible. Their specifications don't have to be robust for
Right.
this vehicle,
Right.
so.
Now with the building, with planning and zoning, that, if we get that Explorer, could that be a pool car, or is that pretty much,
I think that is for one of the code enforcers, which
that's
means
kind of what I thought.
they're out every day.
All the day, yeah.
But if another county department has a surplus vehicle, it's possible we could
Oh, yeah.
repurpose and,
Yeah, that's what
yep,
should we look into that?
yep.
I think if you do another one of your shout outs again, Shelley. Because
Can we,
that get some results.
think about just saying, again, I'm not trying to run the detention center, but you got these 2 cars sitting there and these 3 SUVs, and seems to me they could part with one of them for planning and zoning. I mean, I looked at it the other day, I think the cars would probably be better for the enforcement officer than the SUVs, because they've already equipped them with the cages and everything else in them.
Oh,
But,
okay.
You know, I just hope they understand that. We're not doing this because we want to. Obviously, if we could move one of those sooner than later.
I always, I mean, I hear you, Mike, you know, it's hard when you start sharing vehicles. But the model that we have here in the commissioner's office, I think works very well. There are 6 departments that share the one vehicle, the commissioner's office vehicle. And it works really well. And when we run into a situation where the same car is needed for 2 separate events, we'll look around to see if another vehicle is available before people will be authorized POV mileage. So it's doable. Not everybody on county staff needs a vehicle, by far.
True.
And I think
Very true.
there might be some people that could share.
And under the sheriff's office, Shelley and I were just looking. We may be able to cut another one of those Tahoes, depending on our conversation in closed session about the position that we want to talk to him about. So you might want to put a little flag by that.
Yep.
In other words, cutting back to 4 instead of 5.
Right.
Because he won't need the 5th one if we don't,
Right, but leave it in until we make that decision.
that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Okay. So the planning vehicle in, out?
Out.
Out. Okay. At this point, if we go down the list, I got the
You okay with all that?
commissioners.
Yep.
The commissioner's office out, environmental ops out, building maintenance out, planning out, 2 out of the sheriff's office, the last 2. The detention center vehicle out, and the emergency services vehicle out.
Total of 7 so far, correct, or 8 so far.
Okay, so that's a total of 92,900. That'll come out of there.
Just for curiosity, what have we done so far today, if you know?
I do, I'm
Only
keeping
3
track.
more million to go, Sheriff.
Yeah, we got a couple more categories, but, 15, about 1,086,000. So,
Did we take the, did we take the request from the fire departments out?
Well, we can go back and look at
Would be
allocations.
the next category, if you want to
Yep.
take a look at that.
Thanks,
So,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you,
Mike.
Mike.
Sorry to be so harsh.
Yeah.
I've been through these many a time.
I think
Make
you
it
would,
easier,
I think you would
better.
rather see pay increases for your staff
Hardened or softened.
than some of this other stuff.
Then
so.
extra vehicles floating around.
all right, if you want to look at the allocation section, or I'm going to put it on the screen. I wasn't sure, I had a couple scenarios with this. What I ended up doing was, putting all the mandated ones in as the mandated rate, and we had talked about the inflationary rate being 7%, and left everything that wasn't a mandated one at 7% as a starting point. If we do that, it saves, what do I have on the list? It would save 237,000, and I realize you might not want to hold all of them at the mandated rate, but the health department, we can't do anything with, that 557 is there. Upper Shore Aging is asking for $190,000. If we held them to the 7% inflationary increase, they would only get 12,000 of that. I know you had a lot of conversation about this one, and you may not want to take it down that far. The fire companies, we have a mandated amount for them. I left them in at the mandated amount, which would mean we take 28,000 out of what's in here. If we left them at the 7%, that 28,000 would stay in. If we roll through, oh, come on.
Well, you can't take the mandate, I mean, you can't take the
No, but you can hold them to the mandated.
You can hold them to the
instead of
mandated.
Instead
what
of
I'm-
giving them 7%.
I-
Last week, we talked about a 7%,
Oh, I see. You're
which is
talking
more
about
than the
7%.
mandated amount.
Okay.
Chesapeake College, we can't do anything with, they're mandated. The library, we had actually taken them down in the last conversation to just, the 6% salary increase. So actually, if they got 7%, they would go up $7,000, so I'm not sure. The extension office, they were asking for a 21% increase. If we took them down to a 7% increase, they'd get 8,800 instead of 26,000. The Humane Society, if we held them to a 7% increase, they would get 20,400 instead of the 25,000 they asked for. Sorry, I'm a little technical. Upper Shore Regional Council, there's really nothing new there. We're removing dollars, so I left that one alone. The town of Galena I left alone too, because I don't think you can do a 7% increase. I think this 20,000 is either in or it's out, so I left it in for this exercise. Delmarva Community Services, they just asked for 13,800, which was a 16.9. If we held them at the 7, they would get 5,700 new dollars. Soil Conservation only asked for a 6.3% increase, so I left them alone. St. Martin's Ministries asked for a 50% increase. They asked for $5,000. If we give them the 7% increase, they get $700 more additional funding. Delmarva Craft, we had actually held them constant last time, but if we were to give them the same 7%, we'd add back in 1,050 there. Mosquito control, I can't do anything with, that's mandated.
And the health
Paid
department's
for by the health
mandated.
department, so.
Yeah, so with the health department, what we're doing is we're showing revenues coming back from them, so the expenses stay here, but we've been offsetting revenue. Imagination Library asked for 4,000, if we held them to the 70%, they'd get $70. CASA, they wanted 1,000, if we held them to the 7%, they'd get 980. And that's really would be the changes. So you could go through these one at a time. I didn't know if you wanted to try and, pick an overall philosophy for these.
Yeah.
The other option we could look at is to hold them all constant at last
I don't
year's
wanna-
level.
I mean, they really need to,
Yeah,
but they just got this big grant.
I would, I think we all kind of indicated that we thought that was their turn. So I don't want to cut Upper Shore too.
I remember you, yep. I mean, I agree.
I mean, if you.
I don't know where we get the
Instead
rest
of
of it.
190, if you want to go to 150, or.
Yeah,
I
if you
wouldn't go
wanna do
no
something like
further than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so 150, is that what I'm hearing?
Let's put that down for now.
Well, they have a 175,000 ongoing operating deficit. Am I reading that correct?
That's what they're saying in there, yep.
Then let's give them that.
I think give them 175.
Yeah, because I tell you, that's what they were originally going to ask for.
Okay, so then we would save, 15,000, taking
Yeah.
that number down. Okay.
Right.
Fire companies, you wanna take them down to the mandated level, or
I think,
something higher?
look, it's a tough one, but I think we got to keep them at the mandated level right now and explain to them what's going on. I mean, I don't mind having a conversation with them and explaining why. I understand what, that thing is designed to grow when the economy grows.
As much as I don't want to do that, I think that's the only thing we can do, especially after what we've done with everything else here today so far. I mean, they're still getting 540,
It's gonna go up, I mean, it's 69, we're taking the 40, they're still gonna get almost $30,000 in new money.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, which is,
So-
it's $1 million, there's still $1 million
Yeah,
going to the fire
that-
companies.
Yeah, it's.
Last year, they got $987 and 330, 987, 331. And this year, they're gonna get $1,056,000.
Not if we reduce it. If we reduce it, that was their original they're mandated to get 40, so we're gonna reduce that 69 by 28 if we give them the mandated. So
So
they are gonna get
a
a little
million.
above 30,
1,028,000.
yeah. Oh, you want the whole number? I'm sorry, I'm just doing the increase.
It's about
I guess that's not right either.
1.03 million.
Yeah, they get 1,028,196. Oh, I'm sorry, it's
Average.
right there, right next to the 40,000, I apologize, John.
So it is 1,028,000. It is 1,028,000 that you're getting.
Yes.
You good?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like.
I mean, I'd love to be able to give them a few more dollars, but
After we've just got done.
we just
got done
don't have it
like
right now.
Okay, so if we keep going down, next page, Chesapeake College, we can't do anything with. The library, last week you had said, just give them the equivalent of a 6% salary increase. If we did that, they went down to 5.9%, and I had taken that out. I didn't know if we wanted to hold everybody constant and give everybody 7%, I'd have to raise that up another $7,720. Because it just depends on whether you want to take the same philosophy with everybody that or not.
And this is gonna come up for several of these, so
Yeah.
if you think about this, like last year, or last week, you'd talked about 7%, but previous to that, you'd talked about 6%, which would be roughly the salary increase that,
Yeah, it kind of
if you were
depends whether you
doing the
want to.
salary increase of 6% versus a 7% inflationary.
Or if you have another methodology with how you want to cut a clean swath across it, I mean, I can run it any way you want to look at it. I think we kept talking about the
We're talking
inflationary
about giving the employees 7%.
6 is in the budget
That's what's in the budget.
for us, yes.
7,
6.
6, excuse me.
So I think you want to treat the library the same way.
That's what I
They're
think too.
employees.
So the 6% and leave it the way it is? Okay. The extension office, they asked for a 21% increase. Again, what I calculated here was a 7% increase and an inflationary increase, so if we did that, they get 8,800 instead of 26,006. It would save us $17,781.
I don't think we have any choice, do we?
Well, some of this is for new positions, right?
It's to increase a
Increase-
part-time
Increase the
position.
position, right?
They'd have to figure it out. If we take the approach that we're just giving them 7% and they can do whatever they want with it, they would have to figure out what they wanted to fund.
Or 6%.
Or I'd have to see, I don't know if we have enough information about their salaries to calculate.
But I mean, just give them 6%.
Okay. Well, we gave the library 6% on
On
their
salaries.
So I think
Well, with the information that Dr. Rickard gave today, we might be able to figure
we
it
might
out.
be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with just 7%, which covers inflation cost.
The Humane Society, we did the same thing. If we give them 7%, we take about $4,500 off of their request. It would go down to $20,440.
Unfortunately, 7% is my vote.
Yeah.
The Margaret community, we can't do anything with Upper Shore Regional. I'm assuming Town of Galena, you want to leave in here? We sounded committed last week.
Yeah, that was for that explored, or the.
Right.
The design of-
A portion of it.
Yeah.
All right, Delmarva Community Services, if we take them down to the 7%, they get an additional $5,700. We'd have an $8,000 savings there.
Yeah, I think so.
Soil Conservation only asked for 6.3, so we'll just leave them alone.
Delmarva Community Services. Well, yeah, I'm kind of looking at you on that one.
That's the.
Well, you know, I have one comment about it, and that is the one-stop shop. Because we've been giving them $10,000 per year for the one-stop shop, but they've closed our one-stop shop. So it used to be that we had an office down here, Kent County, DCT's Kent County office was a one-stop shop above Dunkin' Donuts, and that's closed now. So that's one of the conversations that we had last year. You know, is it, part of their request is $10,000 for the one-stop shop.
I think we just leave it like the,
Just give them a percentage and they can figure it out.
yeah.
Yep.
Which they'll get 87,000 instead of 81,
Yep.
yeah.
Soil conservation, St. Martin's Ministries, they asked for an additional 5,000, which would have been a 50% increase. If we give them a 7% increase, their number will go up by $700.
I think those are probably better, but, yeah.
Delmarva Craft, you had said to hold them constant, and that's, we had kind of taken them out last time, but if you wanted to treat them the same and give them the 7% increase, we'd give them an extra $1,050. I think they had asked for 20.
They did.
That's, I don't care, I'm not worried about that too much, that's fine.
Imagination Library, they had asked, for a really large increase on a percentage basis. We funded them 1,000 last year, they asked for 5,000 this year. If we give them a 7% increase, we just give them an extra $70. So they'd get 1,070.
We're no larger than what that investment is. Personally, I hope that we get way more benefit out of that with kids, you know, reading a little bit more.
I don't disagree with you, Albert, I think we'll go ahead and give them what they asked for,
Give them the,
5.
the 5, okay. All right, CASA, they asked for 1,000, if we give them a 7%, they get 980, so it just minorly adjusts their request.
7%.
7%, okay. All right, and that's really it, that's all the departments that asked for increases. So, let's see, we would have had 235, but the big one in here that, that we're not doing is Upper Shore, so that kind of really knocks that number down. So we had 235, 648. Reduce that by. I think we'll save in the neighborhood of about $72,000 here in this section with those changes.
It's only 2 million to go.
Yes, we're up to 1,158,000.
Do what's that,
We're up to 1,158,000.
that we have to cut?
No, that we've cut.
Okay.
That we've
Yeah,
taken
we
out.
got 2 million to cut.
Okay, so the next area that I put on your list was salary increases. Right now, I have a 6% increase in here.
What's that amount to, Pat?
What is the 6%? How much?
$764,000. So the suggestion here was to delay 3% of the salary increase until January. So basically, you'd be deferring half of the raise for 6 months. It would save us $191,000 while preserving the 6% increase eventually. I'm open to other suggestions.
That's just one.
That was just one thought. Actually, Jim kind of suggested that as a way to, and honestly, when I talk to surrounding counties, I can show you what our neighbors are doing. Let me pull this up real quick. We've been surveying. Sorry, that comparison. Okay, so this schedule, let's make this bigger. most counties did a salary action in July, and they did a salary action in January. So you can see, Kent, Cecil, Queen Anne's, Caroline, and Talbot, I got our closest neighbors. So this column shows what the salary increase was as of July 1. We did a flat amount, we did $1,600, but that was the equivalent of a 3% increase. Cecil did a 4% COLA and a 1 to 2% step, which they said it really averaged, it was closer to the 2%, so basically a 6% increase. Queen Anne's did a performance piece, which could be anywhere between 2% and 6%. Caroline did 5%, and Talbot did a step that averaged between 1 and 3%. Then in January, all of our neighbors did something. Cecil did a COLA of 6, Queen Anne's did a COLA of 2, Caroline did a COLA of 3, and Talbot did a COLA of 2. We didn't do an action in July. If you compare over here in this kind of dark shaded, for FY '23, we did about the equivalent of 3%. Cecil did 12, Queen Anne's did 4 to 8%, Caroline did 8, and Talbot did 3 to 5. So then if we come over here and look at FY '24, what's proposed in the budgets, we're proposing 6, Cecil's proposing 6, Queen Anne's is proposing somewhere between 5 and 9 because of the performance piece. Caroline's doing 3, and Talbot's doing somewhere between 5 and 7, depending on the performance piece. So if you look at the total for the 2 years, we're proposing 9 for 23 and 24. Cecil did 18, Queen Anne's did between 9 and 17, Caroline did 11, and Talbot did between 8 and 12. So that's kind of what our neighbors are doing. I put the 6 in at the beginning based on what preliminary information we had. It kind of looks, for 23 or for 24, we are kind of in the ballpark with our neighbors. But if you go back and look what they did in 23, we lost some ground there. So in an effort to try and still hold the percentages, I think the suggestion to delay part of it, might be a good way to defer some of the cost while still making the adjustments. But like I said, I'm open to.
Well, what else have we got to discuss besides the Board of Ed? I mean, I know we haven't talked about that today,
So
but that's
there's
some
a
big
couple.
number as well.
There's two capital items. We can take out the $34,200 for the laptops from the sheriff's office that haven't come out yet, so we can take that out. I think we need to
And
talk
the
about.
reason we can take that one out is because of the procurement you just approved
Yes.
today. So
Right.
that's
That'll
not,
come out.
that, you don't even need to think about that. That's taken care of.
Right.
You just cut it out of the budget.
So there's some conversation about the elevator at the courthouse.
Which there's some new information as of, and it looks like it's going to cost closer to about $250,000. So Dan Matson, who was here earlier, has been talking to Judge Murphy, and he's also been talking to an elevator company. And we're looking, it's definitely in the range of about $250,000.
Unfortunately, I think we need to do away with that this year.
It's been working for a long time.
Well, this is in addition to that
Yeah,
elevator.
Right,
This is one that they transport prisoners up to the
right,
holding cell.
yeah, right.
So if we take.
No, but I
those-
mean, the process, we've been getting it done,
Yeah, yeah.
So if we take those two items out, we take out 134. Now we're up to almost $1.4 million. Contingency, we had bumped the contingency up from 400 to 500 in recent years because the budgets were tight. We're getting away with the 4 this year. I would suggest taking that 100,000 out and taking
Yeah.
it back down.
We've
5
never,
to 4.
I don't think we've ever put over 400 in that contingency.
One year we
One year
did,
we did,
and that was that year, that first year of the pandemic,
Right.
we doubled it.
that's right.
And
it was
what we
8,
found out is we didn't need it.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
so
And
now
we just need to be very conscious throughout the coming year.
All right, and so
I mean-
now we're up to just under $1.5 million. One of the last suggestions, and I also have this table on here, was to possibly look at the benefit structure. The second part of this table that's over here that's labeled benefits,
I don't want to touch that.
okay, well, just to give you a background, we're one of the only counties that pay 100% of the coverage for single people.
For the employee period.
Yeah, so So if we were to change that model and change it so that instead of, like say that counties paid 10% of the cost and the county paid 9%, we would have a savings, because right now, the employees aren't kicking in at all. So if we were to go from what we are now to a 90-10, we would save about $80,000.
Then all you're doing is diluting the pay increase you're giving them, because it's one or the other. You take the benefits away, then they gotta come up with the money to cover the.
At least now, if we are paying 100%, that is one of the reasons to maybe
be
not
here.
jump ship
So,
and be here.
yeah,
Exactly.
I don't
on the
know
other
if it would
side of
benefit
it,
either.
if it's the younger people, a lot of times they're more concerned with the salary than the benefits.
Well, that
We're just-
part's true.
Yeah, we're just trying to look at
And,
all
and the
options.
other side of this same conversation is the county picks up 60% of dependents, where the employee pays 40%. So what, for example, Queen Anne's, and Cecil, it doesn't matter whether it's a single coverage or, family or spouse or child, whatever, they pay 80% or 85%. So whereas we're paying 100% for the employee, but 60% for dependents. So I know from time to time, this conversation has come up, because if you do have somebody on the bottom of the scale and they've got family coverage and they're paying 40% of the family's coverage, it's a big chunk of their paycheck. So
What this would
you'd be
do-
hurting the people with single coverage, but you'd be helping the folks with family and/or some other dependent scenario.
You were insinuating we should be paying more of the spouses?
If you did like an 80-20 or a 90-10, the county could pay 90% of whatever the coverage is. So if it's a single person, 90%.
I understand what you're saying
yeah.
now, yeah.
It-
And it does help the folks at the bottom of the scale.
Anyway, again, we were just trying to identify all options.
And that saves money?
Well, what was the quote? What did you
So
just
if it
quote
was,
us?
if we
Cost us
changed it
money.
to a 90-10, we'd save about 85,000. If we changed it to an 80-20, we'd save about 165,000.
That's including families?
That's making it, so you have winners and losers. The people with family coverage would be paying less, and the county would be paying more. For people single coverage, the employees would be paying
I
more, and the
understand,
county would be
yeah,
paying
that's
less.
interesting.
So there's nobody else who really structures it the way that we do. I came here 28 years ago and this structure was in place. I'm not sure why, but most counties take a straight percentage, across all of the coverages.
We do 80-20.
80-20. And food for thought. So, like I said, we were just trying to look at every section of the budget and try to identify options for savings. The one last thing that's on here that I didn't put a
Wait a minute.
dollar.
Dr. Couch, when you say 80-20, that means that you're paying 80% of the spouses and the employee only pays 20,
Yeah.
where we're
The
60-40.
employee pays 20% of their insurance.
Of whatever it is.
And as it is, yeah. we pay
That's the way
100%.
most people do it.
But to make that change, then we're going the opposite way as far as,
We would save money because
we would save money by,
75% of the people have single coverage and they're not paying. So by those people kicking in the 10% or the 20%
Oh,
or
I
the
gotcha.
15%, the county piece would go down. On the family coverage, it's the opposite. But because we have such a smaller amount of employees in there, overall, by charging the single people an amount, we'd save money.
So 75% of our employees are just.
Right.
Single
But
coverage.
keep in mind, I think you're gonna see some coverage changes if you were to implement this. So the actual dollars, it's just an estimate. And why I say that is if my spouse were a state employee and I could be covered under their insurance for a nominal, their, whatever the state requires, 15%, 20%. But as long as it's free for me to also be a member of our insurance, I might pick it up as a secondary coverage. But now if I have to pay 10% or 20%, I might say, you know what, I think I don't need the county insurance. So changes, this would, maybe I go with my spouse's insurance instead of him being on my insurance. So
I got you.
just because 75% of our folks take single coverage, that doesn't mean they would stay with that.
And I think Jim is gonna be here next week, and he may be able to speak to it, with a little more, depth of knowledge and history about what he's seen when these kind of changes have taken place.
I think those are interesting numbers, but I certainly don't want to take a chance on increasing somebody's benefit and then leaving. I mean, that would be my fear.
I really don't want to fool with benefits.
I'm satisfied, leave it alone too.
Okay? All right,
Then, when you give somebody a raise, then they know just what they're getting. It's not that I get it over here and then I gotta give it back over here or something.
okay, so where that leaves us is there's one other thing, sorry. The last thing on here to look at, and I don't have a value next to it, is I can go back into FY '23, now that we've got 3 more months worth of actual, and look to see if our projections are too high in any areas. Because while that won't really help with the recurring cost, if we go back and look at it, and we can bring some of those projections down, it would give us more one-time money to use in the FY '24 budget. It really won't help with the recurring, but it would give us more money there, and I'm gonna have staff go through and look at that. But, those were kind of the thoughts. The last thing I have on here is a 1 cent increase on the property tax rate generates $332,000.
I have a question about the operating for all the county departments. We have a total number for that, correct?
Yes.
You're the finance person, so if we were to go back and say everyone needs to cut their operating by 2%, what's that do for us?
Well, we've already cut it. You have to remember that. We took.
Yeah, but I'm letting them cut it again by 2%.
Yeah. Sure. So if we look at the overview, it's $7 million.
The challenge there, I'm sure Pat's mentioned it before, but we have some really small departments who have a very, very skeleton, and you have other big departments that have much more robust.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about 147,000, but I don't think you're gonna, some departments just won't be able to do it. I mean, when we looked for stuff that we thought was, fairly obvious, so we've already chunked out a big piece of it. You might get another 50 to 75,000, but I think we certainly can. We've gotta go somewhere, so we certainly can go back
we're
into
just-
the operating.
We're at just under 2 million right now, right? That still needs to be cut.
Well, we're up to just under $1.5 million we took out.
And we were looking for 3.
I tell you, we've took a lot of stuff out of this budget.
You have.
And the other way to look at it, I guess, is to start at ground zero and see what are the things that we really want to put in, so we can kind of maybe flip it around and look at it the other way.
I don't care how you flip it.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's gonna,
Sure.
The top.
Yep.
That's where we started today.
Yeah, so the 3 million, we took $1.5 million out.
Wasn't it 1.05? Or is it 1.5?
1.5.
Okay, so, yeah, you're at
And I guess-
1.5 million
The other number that we didn't
What?
talk
from
about,
budget. You're 1.5 million from
Understood.
balancing the budget.
and the number we didn't talk about was the Kent County Public Schools number. The only opportunity to reduce that is the $250,000 that we put in on top of MOE can be paid within MOE, so that is the only so then we would be funding maintenance of effort plus the coordinator of 125 if we took that 250 out.
I don't think we have any choice but to do it that way. And it just, they're just gonna have to use more of that one-time money than probably they would like to, but
I would get us up to $1,750,000.
a what?
$1,750,000 in cuts.
So we're down to 1.2 million to
Right.
go.
And you didn't really decide on the salary increase for county staff
Yeah, I
either.
didn't deduct that
Or-
out. I mean, the
Where are the feelings? When you get to where you can't cut anymore, there's only, and you got a real problem unless you're talking about increasing the tax
Yeah, two
rate.
sides of the equation. If this
Yeah.
one's, if you're firm that this one's fixed, then you've got to change that one.
Gonna come one way or the other. Either we go deeper into the budget or we raise revenue.
Now, how much shy are we without, if we left the Board of Ed like we originally talked about?
And I have $1,500,000 out, so out of the $3 million, we took $1,500,000, so we still have $1.5 million to go.
So we could leave, if we decided to leave that like it was, we're still $1.5 million, which is about 5 cents on a tax roll, which is a pretty good chunk.
Well,
And I think,
particularly,
and I think there's one more thing I think we should talk about, and Albert kind of alluded to it, and that's the debt service that, on the projects that we have on the books, that is not gonna hit 24, but is going to hit 25. So I think that, I know we looked at these last year when the previous board talked about moving forward with the capital projects that we have. But I think we could bear, since we are where we are. Okay, well, that's really small. Okay, so right now, in the projects that we're gonna borrow for, in FY '24, we have the Nicholson landfill, that's gonna be about $2,500,000 project. The public safety complex at $18,556,000, and we have the Kent County High School roof, the last part of it, so that's $1,048,000. So this part up here talks about the sticker price for the project. This part underneath it talks about the annual debt service. So the annual debt service on those projects, be about $1,383,000. Now that will not hit us in '24, but we will pay it in '25. So I think that, I know we're really struggling with this, and I think 2 years ago, when we thought this project was 2 years out, and we thought we'd have the growth in the property tax, plus interest rates were about half of what they are now. So this pricing has gone up. And this is at 30-year
well,
pricing.
who's to say they're not gonna go higher? I mean,
There's
there's no indication
no
that they're gonna,
indication they're
that
not
they're gonna
going down.
freeze or come down.
They're not coming down.
No.
We're hoping for a plateau, hoping for a plateau. So
That'll be,
the way that this would look, if you look at the second page here, this shows, can you guys see that? The first column shows what our debt payments are right now, everything we have. In 2024, with our existing debt, we're gonna pay $896,000. The capital projects in '24 won't roll in until '25, but in '25, you can see that we layer in that $1,383,000. And those are the projects I think we have to be most concerned about, because those are the ones that are in the budget that we're starting. Then in the '25 capital projects would layer in '26, the '26 and '27, and the '27 and '28. So if we were to do everything that's in our 5-year plan, our debt service would go up to $5.4 million in 2028, which obviously is not feasible.
Listen, I think all the projects that you've talked about are important to Kent County. I think they're good projects. There's 2 things that I'd like to see come, first of all, I want to see what Kerwin does in his summer study and where that thing levels off at. Because that's an issue that's looming out there over our head, more so than anybody else's. And if something don't happen, I don't know where we'll be this time next year. And the only other way to raise, money is to grow your economy, and I wanna wait and see what that project on 301 does, which is not that far off, but,
Well, the other thing too.
you know, you take a gamble on some of your projects if you see a light at the end of the tunnel, but all our lights right now are a little dim.
Well, the one nice bright spot, if I go back to this table here, or if you have a bright spot.
Almost dark is right. And I'm not saying that we're not gonna do I think all those projects are great projects for Kent County, and I'd like to be a part of them.
But if you look at 2030 and 2029, or, yeah, 2030, that's where our debt drops out from the community center. And you can see that our, our.
When does that go away?
2030, it's out.
Only 2 more election cycles.
So,
Yeah, you'll be
Actually,
here,
it's a great way
you'll
to
be able to
put it.
worry about it.
the public safety building, I put together a slide on this, so in the community center will come out in 2030, some, Kent County Public Schools projects for 205,000 will come out in 31. So between 30 and 31, we're gonna see 837,000 come out of our debt service. The other thing too to look at with the public safety building, and this shows the debt service, there's an operating cost. We looked at this building and the public works complex, the operating costs will probably run about $140,000 a year for that building, between HVAC, janitorial, heat, and electric. So when we consider that cost, we'd have to look at
But is that factored in the operating cost now at the,
No, because it's a new building,
it's a new building, so all the costs, we'd have to have a new HVAC contract for
because
it.
you'd still be heating the
no,
other.
but what I'm saying is it is costing us something now, an operating cost.
Oh, I didn't touch that one. So, I mean, I guess you could maybe turn the heat down in that building, but I mean, the detention center is still gonna be operating.
Yeah,
So
but-
you really can't shut off the
No, I'm not saying, I'm just saying that it's costing us something now, so is that in addition to,
This is just the cost for the new building.
Right.
So the new structure that's not here, if we put up a building of that size, the cost would be comparable to operate this building.
but is that closing down Lynch? I mean, because,
You're gonna be shutting Lynch down.
that's what I'm saying, sure, right,
Potentially,
right.
the Tri-County Jail thing might be going through, who knows?
Right, and that's another thing.
And,
Right.
and we may be able just to have contractual services to house our inmates. For the life of me, I don't wanna see anyone lose their jobs. But for the life of me, doesn't it make more sense to pay somebody to take care of the 20-some inmates daily
Absolutely.
as opposed to paying $4.4 million to run a jail?
I believe I heard somebody say that. one
Yes,
time.
you did.
So,
I mean,
That's a big ticket. I mean, that's a big item.
That makes all this look,
that would free up a lot of dollars to work
That's right,
with.
Jeff.
that would do what we needed to do.
Correct.
Now, that's not anything that's gonna happen real soon, probably. I haven't even been notified that when they're gonna have their first meeting.
They just got the cost estimates from an estimator, so they haven't even attempted to arrange a meeting yet.
But I can't wait to engage about contractual services, because I think that's a good plan for Kent County.
With these numbers.
I think we're too
mean,
little to have our own jail.
I think we are too.
And you're talking about $4.4 million to house.
We can do a lot
21
with $4.4 million.
Yes. And again, we're probably.
Now, we wouldn't recover that all at once, because I think we've made it very clear that,
Yeah,
we're
I mean, you're still
we're
gonna
not
have some
gonna-
obligations.
we're not gonna get rid of all those employees at one time, but through attrition and that kind of, I think we will. Or that's what, I think there's a real savings there.
So if we buy into the regional detention center, not just outsource the cost per inmate per night, but if we buy into it, those numbers are not into here. They've not been added in.
Because we would absolutely have some operating savings, and I don't know how far out, I mean, are we in a 3 to 4 year window? I think
Probably
I heard.
four.
They told-
best case.
Said 4, yeah.
Yeah,
So, again.
And again, it's a big if,
right.
but I mean, to me, it just makes sense. I mean,
Well, I think it obviously makes sense for the other counties too. I mean, we're all in the same boat, so
Right.
if we can all kind of
Right.
pool our resources and save,
So I think, I just wanted to put this, like I said, this is truly not a 24 budget issue, but it's a 25 budget issue, and, we
No.
just, and we also are right at the point, I guess, since the plan changed, that we need to get back in touch with bond council and the, and let them know that we've had a change from the original plan, and
Was there an appetite to have any tax increase at all?
why are you looking at me?
Well, I don't know, I got.
I mean, obviously.
You're on
I
my
don't think
left.
there's an appetite.
No,
but-
Not an appetite at all.
No, that was the wrong word. I agree, that's wrong.
so let's talk about timetable. We have until next Tuesday afternoon to run the constant yield ad in the paper. So we have like a week to mull it over, percolate on it, tops, but next Tuesday, if we're gonna raise the tax rate, we need to make a decision.
And I also think that it's a good time to talk about what time we're gonna meet next Tuesday, because right now you have a evening meeting, so we have a 3 o'clock budget work session scheduled. So we have a lot of ground to cover with closed sessions and individual personnel requests. I personally don't know that 3 to 5 is enough time to do that and to come up with a final number for Pat for tax. And that's a drop dead, that's a hard deadline.
Okay, so, like you said, we're $1.5 million out of the way. I mean, we still got $1.5 million worth of work to do, whether that's in cuts or tax increases. So, we got a week to think about it.
And we can brainstorm and see, I mean, like you said, we'll put together every other thought Shelley and I can think of. I mean, you're
And
right.
I'll
we
tell you,
can go
we've
back
even,
into the operating
this
budget.
is even going, because we even went into the, our road paving and, I mean, things like that. When we're,
Yeah, we looked back at capital and really couldn't come up with much.
I think capital's at a skeleton level at this point. Pat and I thought, we were very optimistic, and we went and we looked at it again, and we'd forgotten just how much you'd cut that first
The
budget
only
work
thing
session.
that would help that is if we go back and look at the projections for '23 and we can scale back on some of those projections, then we would have some more one-time money to put towards those paving and those projects.
But getting back to the school, I'm pretty sure the legislative intent for that 250,000 was not to become part of maintenance of effort. In other words, it's above maintenance of effort. I'm pretty sure that was our legislative
I think
intent.
that was the intent.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, maybe I thought that it could be,
In black
I
and white.
think it could be used.
In black and white,
But
it
that probably
says.
wasn't what
Right.
okay.
their intent was. Oh, you find more money?
No, I was just, if it's all right.
she's
I just wanted
she was being a cheerleader for her
Well,
cause.
I don't think it was their intent. I mean, it might not be something that we were gonna be able to do, but
No, I
Yeah,
understand that. All I'm saying is, you think your lights are out, our lights are out too. So we looked at we had a meeting last night, and we looked at.
I
what
watched you.
We were gonna have to cut. So we've already cut $1.6 million, and we were counting on the maintenance of effort and the 250 and the 125. And we looked at what we would still have to cut. And so bottom line is, we're gonna have to cut $3 million out of our budget, which, if it translates into teachers, we projected we were gonna cut 5 teachers, now we're up to 12 teachers that we're gonna have
I don't know that they're really looking to have that they're gonna have a closed session door with the president of our commission. They can't even have a closed session door with our whole board because
I
it's
can
an Open
assure you,
Meetings Act
one of
violation.
the topic of that meeting that, and with the time that I get to spend with him, is gonna be devoted to talking about how the wealth formula is killing Kent County.
And other than that, their time here is gonna be dedicated to their staff meeting and what they are.
wanted me to ask, I mean,
Yeah.
that was just.
I can definitely put it on the table.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask.
And I tell you, the closer we get to that time, we'll know more about.
Correct.
What, we don't even really, the arrangements aren't solid yet, and we don't really know what they even want. I mean,
It's been pushed back once, but who's to say?
yeah.
Right.
Only thing that we know is that they're gonna be here, and, there's been a few arrangements made, and that they're gonna spend the best part of the day here looking around Kent County. But, we would be extremely, I'd be checking my temperature if I didn't think that we'd be talking about Kerwin and the wealth formula at some point. We're certainly gonna not waste an opportunity to tell him how it's affecting us.
What I would say is, I really don't think they're gonna change the wealth formula.
I don't think they're gonna change it either, but my spiel to him is gonna be, it doesn't work for us. It might work for the rest of the state, but we gotta make some kind of if you're not gonna change it, then you're gonna have to pony up and help us out.
Yeah, I would say let's be solid and together in saying we need sparsity, allocation for a small school size, something like
Yeah,
that.
you gotta come up with some way of helping us, cause we just cannot do what you're asking us.
The wealth formula is, I think if we're going down a rabbit trail.
I hear you.
They do not want to open that door because it would affect too many jurisdictions.
I can't tell you how many times we've heard that's
Yep.
in Annapolis. We're not touching the
Over
wealth
and over,
formula.
yep.
That's just that simple.
Well, the interesting thing is, I came across a document that shows where the state is paying for small college, community colleges. They have a allocation for very small community colleges, and then community college. So it's already in legislation. So one of the things, I sent that to the governor's office a couple weeks ago, and they seemed very interested in that, because that's something that's already in place. So, I think that we need to hit those kinds of things, and that's gonna make a difference, because the wealth formula, every time I bring it up, they run the other way.
We hear you. Same with us. We
I think that's
understand you completely.
I think moving forward, though, I think she's exactly right. If we all
Yeah.
have that same little
Same message.
talking
Same,
point,
we have to have
whether it
that
is
soundbite.
sparsity or whatever we say, I think that if we all say that same soundbite, I agree with that. And I think even like when we start trying to draft legislation this summer with their delegates and senators, that's a good way to, I think that's the way we're gonna have to approach it,
But
because
what I'm saying is, if you take the 250 away from what we were counting on, I don't know how we make this work at all. It's hard enough, it's gonna be hard enough for us to make it work, but it'll be, I don't
well,
know.
look, in my opinion, we're 1.5 million. If we were $250,000 away, I'd say, sorry, but we're $1.5 million away, I mean, so, right, well, that's what I'm saying, I mean,
Yeah, and when it's all said and done, we're not taking away, that's not even counting what my departments and my schools asked for. If I add that on, then we're talking about $4.5 million, so we're in the same boat as you. But I'm talking about actual cuts that we're taking to our budget, and that's counting on that 250. We will have cut our budget $3,031,610.
So you've been sitting here pretty much all day. And you saw what we did with the county positions that
That's what we did.
that are vacant. And some of the new requests for new positions. And I watched your meeting last night. I really don't want to see you cut teacher positions. And to me, where the dollars are at the higher levels in the administration. And I'm not trying to tell you how to run the school system, but I would encourage you to take a real good look at that and see if there's something that
Right.
you could do with
We
that,
don't have
because
that
we're doing
many-
without.
We don't have that many administrators. I mean, we really don't. We have 7.
Compared to what there used to be years ago, you're right.
We don't. And
Now, I'm not talking about principals, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about,
either. I'm just saying we have.
I'm
7.
suggesting maybe, and I don't want to see anyone lose their job, I really don't. But there may be people that are working in administrative positions that aren't even in the classroom. That,
Most of those, the people that we have to maintain is we have our HR. I mean, the amount of work that has to be done with certification, especially with Blueprint, are tripling in terms of the amount of work. We have our finance person, we have our teaching and learning for curriculum and whatnot, all of the work that has to be done there. Student services, we can't do without that. Blueprint's gonna be taken care of, that was under grant anyways. Special education, the amount of work that is coming out of special education and our assistant coordinator, we had to add that person just because of the amount of work. And then there's me. So, you can do without me, that's fine.
You'd volunteer right now.
Look,
That's-
I was hesitant even bringing that up, but I mean, I just, you know,
We've looked at it, and we've cut administrators, we have definitely done that. We've got Title I that's paid out of Title I. We've got an assistant coordinator that's paid out of a grant. We've got teacher specialists that are paid out of grants. So, yeah, I think we run a pretty lean machine. I really do, the amount of work and the reports that have to be submitted to MSDE, and also requirements from the Blueprint that we have within our own organization. And we're already doing multiple things. I mean, we don't have just a dedicated person to do one thing. You know, I help with doing construction and doing some of the work that has to be done that we have to turn in at MSDE. I was doing Blueprint work, I'm not doing that anymore. But, you know, we've got people that are doing multiple jobs, not just one thing. So, we counted on some of the savings. We've got some administrators that are retiring, and, you know, there's some savings there, which we counted into the budget as well. I don't know, before it's said and done, I don't know what we might end up doing. But we're looking at everything that we can possibly look at to see where we can save dollars too. Because $3 million out of our budget is pretty significant. I mean, it's not anything to, I've not seen anything to this level of us having to cut out of our budget since we consolidated 2 schools.
And in 25 years, I can tell you, I've never seen it that bad on this end. I've never seen us have this.
It's pretty.
I don't know where this other $1.5 million is gonna come from.
Try and get you some suggestions, you might
Well,
not
I
like
know,
them, but.
When the what?
$1.5 million.
The
$1.5 million,
$1.5 million?
and
Oh, I
we
thought
still
you
gotta
said
follow.
7.5, I thought.
Don't do that,
What
Dave.
he
Whoa,
was-
went the wrong way. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's,
I mean, that 1 cent property tax thing that they,
323,000.
yeah, I mean, that's not really solving anything. It's a help, but it's not solving it.
Yeah, we're talking 5 cents to solve it.
Shelley, what about our recreation transfer?
I don't know.
But what bothers me is if you, and if you raise the taxes now, the way the projections of the blueprint goes, that's just.
You're gonna have to do it again
Gotta
next
do it
year.
almost every year, and we
And
can't do that.
What's that do to economic development?
Yeah,
I mean, we're already,
Stymie,
we're already 11 or 12 cents higher than Queen Anne's right now?
you know?
Last I looked, they were in the 80 cent range, somewhere
Yeah,
84, 85, somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah, I think it's
Second
closer to
highest on the
15,
shore, I
16
think.
We are, next to
Yeah,
Cecil County's above us.
But barely, we're basically neck and neck. So we
Yeah.
keep saying we're second on the shore, but basically Kent and Cecil are the same.
That tied.
Have we gotten the MOE numbers yet?
No, I keep, I know,
I'm sorry.
as soon as we know, you'll be the first person we call.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we really don't know what that maintenance of effort number is yet?
I mean, we just have to go by what they told us. I mean, I don't have the official number. But, yeah.
And the 125 you're talking about, that goes to hire some implementation coordinator, right?
What we're gonna do with that is because that money will come to us from you and from the state. We're
Mine
paying
needs to.
the grant coordinator
A whole
on the
org
grant.
chart of
We're
all
gonna
county
move him
staff,
into local so we can pay him.
just to see if
We'll
there's
move some of the budget
something
enhancements into the grant.
that
But
looks
we're
out
just
of,
keeping
you know,
the hand out
like
for
off.
another year because they're all recurring. But, I mean,
I know.
No, you've made, you've made it very clear. I understand what you're saying. Pat, do we let you spend another week at it, figuring out the changes we've made today?
Oh, yeah.
Knowing that next week, we gotta decide whether we go, well, about the tax rate, that's number one on the list. You're gonna tell us how far we are away, and then we gotta decide, are we gonna cut more, or are we gonna raise some revenue?
Yeah, if any of you have any particular areas you want us to look at, call me. Shelley and I will get together and see where we think we can dig a little deeper, and we'll try and have some options for you.
And
I
I'd
got a
recommend,
question. So can you, and I know it's very generic, but, and look, I'm almost in tears even having, thinking about this and asking you this, but could you give us a rough guesstimate of per household, you know, if we had to raise this 3 cents, 5 cents, depending on whatever it is?
Yeah.
A rough guesstimate per household. I know it's gonna vary, but, you know, I've talked about this, you know, I think with several people. You know, a lot of people be able to absorb a tax increase. There are people out there right now that, you know, they're not gonna get that 6% raise because it's not there. They're already facing inflation, and then on top of that, we're gonna ask them for more money. I mean, it truly could mean the difference between somebody living in Kent County and not, and that just bothers the crap out of me.
No question about it.
But I was gonna ask you too, Ms. Couch, and I don't, being new at this, and do you talk to other superintendents? I mean, are other school systems going through the same thing? Please tell me yes, because, okay, good, good. And I hate to be, but I was hoping that we weren't the only ones that.
At Harford County's superintendent and county,
19 million less.
county executive, they're at one another's throats, all over the top radio and television.
It is everywhere. I think the only school systems that are not going through what we're going through are the ones that have the majority of their money coming from the state, like Somerset, good as gold.
Caroline,
Caroline.
Somerset, they don't care. They're good to go.
I mean, everyone that has most of their money coming from the state is not having an issue.
Right.
Thank you.
It's the ones that are counting on local, for their revenue stream. It's just, look, and I appreciate, I appreciate everything that you're going through. We're going through the same thing. I just, you know, it's hard for me to have to talk
Well, are you thinking that they would be talking about closing the middle school and putting it into the high school or something? Is that?
No, I mean, what the state is looking at is closing another elementary school. I mean, that's what, when I had my conversations with people from the state, they look at our, because they ask for the numbers of, you know, what we have at each of our schools. And, you know, that comes up, and I just like, there's no way I'm gonna bus my kids, the little kids, you know, 3.5, 4 hours a day. That doesn't make any sense to me. That hurts me. I mean, I feel like the only person that really understands and seems to really get the picture is Eric Lukey from the governor's office. He really has been a champion for Kent County, and he has said, let's not go there, they're as small as they can be right now. But talk to other people, and that's the first thing that comes out of their mouth,
Huh.
is close the school.
So what time do you want to meet next week? And I recommend that we start with the closed session, because I think we need to talk about these positions, because that'll give you a really good, those
Right.
are some of the bigger ticket items that you're going to want to discuss.
So, and the other thing too, and I can send you the materials, is there's probably, it's not a big dollar amount. It's probably about $60,000, but there's probably half a dozen to a dozen, salary requests.
And yeah, and there's a couple full positions we need to talk about, so.
But really, the only position that we're gonna be talking about is the sheriff's position.
There's a couple others.
Is
There's
it?
about half dozen others at
Is
least.
it? Okay.
I mean, other than the little bumps.
Oh.
I mean, yeah, Pat doesn't know some.
Well,
So,
Pat, I will tell you that what you sent to us to look at, these suggestions and reductions, I found it very, very helpful.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
well, it
So-
was just too much to walk into cold.
She
and I
keeps.
think-
Yeah, but, I mean, if you could kind of hit us up again with a
We will try.
revised,
Yep, yeah.
In other words, Ms. Patton.
and some other
You
suggestions.
might not like them, but.
Just fix
yeah,
it.
we'll
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fix it.
That's what she's got to do.
Any chance you might want to give that rainy day fund back to the county?
That would fix it.
No, it would help fix it.
Yeah, it wouldn't even get us there.
And then you're gonna have to turn around and fix it the next year, and we know that's not
Well,
gonna
we're
happen.
gonna have to, unless they change, we're gonna be in the same boat again, probably worse.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what we talked about. Whatever we put in fund balance, which we are gonna put in, we gotta have that available for the year after, because I don't foresee this getting any better. It's gonna get worse.
It is.
I'm just hoping that we get through, and then the two things that I've pointed to is that summer study, they're supposed, I can't believe that there's not gonna be something done with this blueprint, because everybody's complaining, except, like you said, the ones that get the majority of their money from the state, well, they don't give a damn, they're okay.
And
But
when I
we're not
spoke with
one of 'em.
Rachel Ice, when I spoke with Rachel Ice, she said that there are counties lining up because they saw that certain counties got help. And you've probably heard this too. They're all lining up saying, well, where's
What about
our
me?
help? What about me?
I have heard
So
that.
that's why we have to really hit that soundbite and really focus on right where you need, because they're not gonna change the wealth formula.
No, I agree, I completely agree with you there. Well, I think we're gonna use the argument that, well, when you look at the comparison, I mean, you can come up with a lot of arguments that this is not fair to Kent County. I mean, the list goes on and on. But like you said, they're not gonna change the wealth formula, so come up with some other way of helping us, because we can't do it by ourselves.
And I'll be happy to forward, Shelley, I'll be happy to forward that information that I got from the community colleges. There's a report that just came out, and there's a really nice word about how they fund Scaring Small.
That would be good if you could do that, because if, we are gonna have a conversation with we're gonna, in that whole day, we're gonna make sure we got some time to talk to the governor about this issue. And if that could be part of the conversation, we'll review it and look at it, and if it fits, we can, it's a lot easier to get somebody to think about doing something if you got a plan. Yeah, instead of just saying, do something, how about doing this?
Yeah, and Maryland already has it on the books, it's already on,
Yeah, I think it's,
already being done.
I think it's important that we get that, so we have time to look it over and,
But I will be following up with a letter, just because I was directed by my board, just if we can have 10 or 15 minutes, and if it's just me or me and one of my board members, just an opportunity to.
That's higher likelihood than having the
Oh, I didn't
whole
want the whole-
entourage.
No, I didn't want the whole board.
Yep,
It would
Yep.
just be a representation,
Yep.
just so that we could have, arguing.
The
I tell you what I
Secretary
think
of
would look good, I
MSD
think it
will
would
be
look
here.
good, if I'm gonna be a part of it, if you and I could do it together, a piece of it, so it also looks like we're united, and, I mean, us and this, I think that would help out,
Mm-hmm.
and if we have some examples, of plans,
If that's a motion, I'll make it.
I got you.
Another question, we're continuing to have vacancies because we're just continuing to have turnover. Do you wanna see those positions also? We've had, I think, a couple this week.
Oh, we'll talk.
We're gonna talk about that next
Okay.
week.
But, so is the guidance to HR to pause all the new ones also, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I don't wanna advertise for nothing unless until after we've had a discussion with them.
Okay.
Be bad to hire somebody and you can't pay them.
Ask for volunteers. So what time do you want to meet next week?
The meeting's at 6 o'clock, right?
Correct. Today, we went for 3.5 hours.
7 in the morning.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
I can do, 1 o'clock is good, I think that we probably.
I mean, we really have to finalize this thing next week,
Yeah, it's gotta be done. When we walk out of there next week, it's gotta be done.
1 o'clock.
And we'll start with a closed session, because I
And if
think
we don't
that'll.
need all that time, then, we won't take it, but,
Then
we
we'll
can
go
get it.
to, we'll go to the bar.
Or maybe we ought to go to the bar first.